We are starting second day of Kontakt online conference, and today I am very happy and I'm, let's say, proud to present my friends and guys who will do some presentation, and after that panel discussion for the start of the second day. So for the start, we have Didier Gosset, who is our really friend from the start, from the Kontakt start, and he is almost every year present in Belgrade, this time online. Didier represent IMPALA. IMPALA formed in 2000 by prominent independent labels and national trade associations. IMPALA has more than 5,000 members. IMPALA is a non-profit making organization with a scientific and artistic purpose. So what is good to know is that Didier will do a kind of presentation in COVID times, what happens in discography. So Didier, next 10-15 minutes are yours, and after that we're going back to do panel discussion with the INES guys. Didier, mic is yours.
Thank you, Marko, and good morning. It's really good to be with you, although, as you mentioned, quite disappointing not to be in sunny Belgrade. It's always much better to be in Serbia. Our discussion today will focus on the future of the music industry in light of the new circumstances. Those new circumstances, I think we all know what we're talking about. It's obviously COVID-19. It's a sudden new circumstance. It's a new circumstance we did not see coming, and it's a new circumstance that no one could be prepared for. I will probably ask more questions than I will bring answers. The reason is obviously that this pandemic is still going on strong. We are in a strange situation with that so-called second wave, or is it even third wave? We see in Israel that they are reconfining people. There are similar discussions in the UK. I know that some parts of Madrid are reconfining. So it's pretty much an ongoing situation, but it's a situation that has already been impacting the music sector for more than 6 months. Music, I think most people are aware of that, is a virtuous circle. It's a business in which all the activities are clearly interlinked and are depending on each other. That virtuous circle, if we look at it as a chain, is now broken. And the most visible part where it's broken is probably the live sector. It goes without saying that concerts are as good as gone, although in some countries in Europe at this point in time, we see them coming back with very limited audiences. Touring across Europe is now some kind of science fiction idea. And that absence of live concerts is not only impacting the live sector itself, but also all the people working in it. We're talking about technicians, but also booking agents and all the people who might be, to some extent, working on live shows. How has the live music sector reacted? Well, it's now organizing more and more live streams of concerts. We have seen the first virtual festivals taking place on all kinds of platforms. And that's probably the first biggest new development. It seems that at this point in time, and although we will discuss it later, we will see that across all the music sector, there's a new trend towards more digitalization. It is not replacing a proper live music event, but it's some kind of new tool that is helping the sector to survive in these circumstances. Before going into the details of all the different aspects of the music business and the different segments, I found a very interesting study that was done in Norway. Let me try to share that with you without doing anything stupid. Can everyone see it? Yeah, you can. Great. Bear with me. I'm not any kind of tech guru myself. So that's a study that was done with all people from the music sector in Norway quite quickly after the beginning of the pandemic. And all those people were requested to ask what they thought the impact of the pandemic would be on the different aspects of the sector. So in blue, you will see what people think will be the most likely changes. So meeting activities, we are the proof of that today. We should be in Belgrade, having a nice panel followed by a fresh beer. We're just all at home discussing this on Zoom. We'll also see, if you add up the blue and black segments, significant changes expected in fan contact, and we're talking about live music here. Release of records, more about that later. Slowdown expected in music production, and so on and so on. So it was quite clear for everyone from the very beginning that the whole sector would change. The first biggest aspect to be expected was probably the fact that everyone was staying at home, not going to shows, but still consuming music. We know at the same time that streaming has been an increasing trend over the last years and keeps increasing, especially if you look at the case of the Balkans with the recent launch of new platforms. I know that Spotify launched in the whole of ex-Yugoslavia during the confinement, which was an interesting move. But so the big question was, will streaming in any way compensate for the lost income in the music sector? I have a few other. Sorry, I'm a bit lost here on my screen trying to share all that. Where are you guys? Sorry, that's not what I wanted to do. Bear with me. Sorry for that. I don't have them open. Sorry. No, it's not going to work that way. I'm really sorry for that. I'm trying to show you some data from France about how the streaming has acted as some kind of airbag for the sector. But before finding that one, can you see that one, which is actually from the US? What's really interesting is that basically streaming, despite the pandemic and despite fears at first that it would not be growing as much as expected, keeps growing. The incremental growth in the US market is still quite strong, although it is more limited than what would have been expected. So it says a lot about one of the unexpected challenges of the pandemic is that although people keep listening to music online, their consumption of music has been changed widely by the fact that they are staying at home and that there are some specific activities that are linked to your music consumption. You listen to music when you go to sports, you listen to music when you are in public transportation going to work, you stream music when you are at home with your friends before going out, and so on and so on. So what's really interesting, and I hope I can know, I'm reading, yeah, here it is that those are French data. We see by comparing the first semester of 2019 in a normal life, dare I say, with the first semester of this year with the pandemic, we see a very significant decrease, and those are the French numbers, of 36% in the sales of physical records. The explanation is quite easy. Record stores were closed for a while. It's more expensive to buy records online. But at the same time, despite the limitations that I've just mentioned, the streaming is still on the rise in most European markets, with France noting an increase of 17% across the first semester of this year. So basically, we can say that streaming, just like in a car accident, was the kind of airbag that, to some extent, saved the music sector. The other aspects of the sector are obviously affected. At IMPALA, we are, for obvious reasons, really interested in the work of record labels. Record labels have not been as badly affected as the live music sector. I mean, they are still working, they are not completely blocked, but obviously you all know that releasing a record implies bands touring, implies PR, not only on social media, but also in record stores, on billboards in the streets, and all that tended to disappear. Meaning that the impact of the pandemic on the recorded side of music will probably be lasting much longer. We are all dreaming of that day where the pandemic will come to an end, thanks to a vaccine or any other kind of solution. The recorded music sector will probably take more time to fully recover, although it has not been as badly affected as the other segments of the sector. A few other issues that I think will be worth discussing as new challenges in our discussion later on will be the position of the consumers. Obviously, it's not just the music sector that's affected by the pandemic, it's the whole economy. We know have consumers and music fans that are likely to have a decreased spending power, that are also likely to be worried about going back to shows, and that may have less access to buying physical goods related to music, be it records or merchandising and so on. So this is probably one of the big challenges that will also have to be tackled in the coming months and the coming years. On the other hand, we have witnessed some significant developments that are kind of newish and that we are hoping will be a good example for the future. There has been a lot of new industry initiatives from key players, mainly from the digital world, that were maybe not as involved in a crisis in the past as they are now. I'm talking about the likes of Spotify, the likes of YouTube, the likes of Amazon, all of which have tried to help with their own COVID relief funds. This is kind of newish because for a lot of people in the music sectors, those service providers are perceived as being suppliers or business partners. They are now trying to some extent, and that's probably something worth rediscussing in more detail, they are trying to be really part of the sector by helping the people who are making music happen. I think we should also, during this panel, discuss the role of the collecting societies. They are like one of the best kept secret from the music sector, at least for people who are not working in the music sector. But we have seen also on their end a lot of newish initiatives that had as a main goal to make sure that artists and record labels and any other stakeholders in those societies would get a quicker access to their monies, the monies that are collected by those societies, but also for them to have a quicker access to any kind of relief funds. Last but not least, I think that the industry itself has reinvented itself to some extent. There is usually, I wouldn't say a lot of competition, but a lot of separated segments of work in the music industry. You will have the live music sector being structured and festivals talking to each other. You will have the same with record labels. You will have the same with publishers being federated, the same for booking agents, and so on and so on. What we have witnessed over the last few months in quite a lot of European countries are efforts for all those different segments from the music sector to unite through new forums, through new roundtables, in order to be able to speak with one voice and properly represent the music sector as a whole. I think if this pandemic has proven one thing, is that all the segments of the music sector are relying on each other to succeed in normal times, never mind in pandemic times. before we move to the panel, I really want to come with two numbers that I think are really astonishing. The estimations of the losses for the music business in the first 6 months of 2020. So I'm talking about just 3 months of pandemic, not the 6 months of pandemic, just the proper first semester of 2020 in two key markets. In Germany, it is expected that the loss at this point in time will be 5.5 billion euros, which is a loss of up to 50 or 60% of the usual annual income. In France, which is one of the other key markets in Europe, the loss is estimated at 4.5 billion, which represents a 43% loss. So the big challenge will be obviously to compensate for those losses. We've mentioned streaming. Some of these will be hard losses, especially in the live music sector. The shows that did not happen will not be replaced. It's the same in the recorded music sector. The records that were not sold will probably be quite difficult to sell in the future for obvious reasons. I would like to finish with what is probably the aspect we tend to forget most of the time, is the role of politics, state heads, governments, and politicians overall in supporting the sector. Obviously, I've mentioned it, the music sector is not the only one affected, but the music sector is one of the most badly affected sectors in Europe for all the reasons that we have mentioned. The European Union has a key role to play in that, so as the governments in every single EU country and European country for that matter. And the last document I would like to share with you guys is actually the COVID-19 crisis plan. It's a 10-point plan that was prepared by the IMPALA task force in collaboration with our members from the recorded music sector all over Europe. And you will see basically that the first point, even if we looked at national, EU and sector level solutions, the first one is still a joined-up approach across Europe. That's an approach we still do not have properly. I think the best example at the moment would be touring. It's still quite difficult to know as a citizen where you can travel to, never mind if you could book a tour across Europe. But that issue of talking as a sector with one voice to all our politicians at national and EU level is more important than ever. I realized that this was a very, very quick and a bit chaotic presentation, but I guess that we will have plenty of opportunities to rediscuss some of those aspects in our conversation.
Thank you very much. Those numbers are actually catastrophic, but you know, we need to go further and to talk about the future of music industry in new circumstances. That is the name of our panel discussion. Now we have with us Thomas from Waves Vienna. Hello, and good morning to you.
Hello, sorry for being late. Like I told your colleague already that we have a corona case in our office, and I just came back from picking up my test results, and lucky me, I'm negative. So yeah.
Good to know, and take care. I mean, stay safe. Thomas from Sonic Visions, Luxembourg. Hello again.
Hey.
Cosmin from Mastering the Music Business, our neighbor from Romania. Hello again.
Hello.
And Natascha from Gigmit INES, Berlin, Germany. So we have Berlin, Luxembourg, Vienna. You're in Bucharest, right, Cosmin?
Yes.
And Didier from Belgium. Second part of this panel will be panel discussion, actually, run by INES. INES is Innovation Network of European Showcases. It is a European cooperation project initiated by 8 international showcases, festivals, and Gigmit, the European digital platform for artist booking. In this moment, 19 showcases are members of INES, including Kontakt from Belgrade. So I will now give a mic to Natascha, who will moderate this panel. Thank you very much and good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and also for those facts and statistics you showed us, Didier. Also from my side, now hello everyone and welcome to this panel where we will discuss the future of the music industry in those new circumstances. I'm really honored and pleased to moderate this panel today with those wonderful panelists that are with me. And I think to get started, I know we are talking about the future, but maybe we can take one step back and talk about the present situation first. So I would like to ask you, how did those new circumstances affect you and your festival or your institution? What kind of solutions or measures did you come up with to deal with that? Yeah, maybe Thomas here, maybe you want to start. I know Waves Festival just took place last week or 1.5 years ago. Maybe you can start telling us a bit about that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Last one in, first one out. Yeah, well, as you said, like we had our festival from the 10th to the 12th of September. So it's 1.5 weeks ago. We decided to have the festival as a hybrid version this year. In fact, we did a concept for almost like 5 different versions of the festival since the pandemic came around the corner in March. And finally, we decided to have the conference as a live broadcast event where we had panelists and audience on site, but also online speakers and online audience. And for the festival, we only had pre-recorded shows, which we broadcasted on 3 channels online and had a public viewing area where we broadcasted selected shows from these 3 channels. For the public viewing area, we had our festival center, WUK, which already did lots of public viewing events for football world championships and stuff like that. So we already had a setup there. And we were allowed to have 250 people each day because it was outdoors and it was seated, but everyone could stand up and get a drink or something with a mask wearing. Basically, it was a little bit, yeah, luck for us because right the day after the festival, the permits were taken back for having events indoor with more than 50 people. We had at the conference, we had the maximum capacity of 100 people in the building and 50 people at each of the panels because we had 2 conference rooms. So yeah, I mean, it was quite hard when setting up because almost all of the sponsors quitted because we couldn't deliver the things we agreed on in the contract. And of course, like we weren't able to sell any tickets in numbers like we did in the last years. For example, like last year we had almost 14,000 people on 3 days at the festival. And this year it was 533 people on site. For the streaming, we didn't take any money. It was a pay-as-you-wish solution. But in the end, we had 18,000 visitors online who watched some of the shows. We have the exact numbers for each day and each channel on our website, which came out to be quite cool for us. But in the end, the total of the festival was a financial loss, of course, because without tickets sales and without any sponsoring, I mean, we had two sponsors. Red Bull didn't jump off the sinking boat. And Yamaha, through the INES network, came in with an online masterclass. But that's not enough to make it work. Yeah, and then we also broadcasted the Austrian Music Awards at the festival, and it happens that some guys who met to celebrate the win of the Austrian Music Awards in 2 categories went to a dinner, and one of them was positive. And a couple of guys from this dinner came to the festival. And so we ended up with a couple of positive cases after the festival. So all the contact tracing shit was going on, and we had to make a lot of calls. And yeah, and one colleague from the office ended up testing positive as well. She's in quarantine now, of course. And all people from the office had to go testing. And as the situation in Vienna especially is not very good looking right now, because there are lots of cases coming up right now, all the testing facilities not enough, and you have to wait quite a long time for being tested, and you have to stay in quarantine, and everything is a little bit messy right now. Yeah. So that was like the experience from our festival last weekend.
Thank you very much. Maybe Cosmin, do you want to continue? How did those new circumstances affect you, and how is the situation in Romania at the moment?
Yes, of course. So when the lockdown began in March, we were just, I think, a week from having our festival, Mastering the Music Business. And up until the last moment, we hoped that we could find a way to have the event in one form or another, because flight restrictions weren't yet announced. We had some indoor events restrictions that were rising up day by day. So at some point, we could have had an event with, I think, 200 people inside. And we said, well, it would be about our daily attendance, so maybe we can still have our event with the new health safety measures. But then 2 days after, the limit was dropped even more to 50 people. And then quickly it became clear that there was no chance for us to actually have the event, especially with lots of our speakers coming from internationally, you know. So we had many speakers having to come from abroad, and flights started being cancelled, and people began to worry, of course, because, well, there's this situation happening. Maybe it's not really safe for us to go there and have the event. So a week before actually having the conference, we announced that we would cancel, and we announced dates for next year. So we announced dates for March in 2021. What happened afterwards was that we kept on finding ways. It felt wrong to have a year go by with no conference, especially after so many preparations, and especially after we had a great schedule. We had a great showcase festival prepared for this year. So we tried to find ways to make the conference happen. We looked at our friends from Talent Music Week, for example, who had reprogrammed their event and had made some sort of hybrid event as well, as you guys in Vienna did, Thomas. And we thought, well, maybe we can find a way to have a sort of online event that would, be relevant, especially for the situation that we were in. And this is how the online edition of Mastering the Music Business was born. We had it at the end of July, so almost 2 months ago. And basically we had 2 parallel video streams running in 3 days. So we have a lot of content that we filmed back then. Luckily, a lot of our speakers were available and were really helpful. And we managed even to get some new speakers interested in our conference that maybe would have been even difficult for them to arrive to Bucharest in normal times. So yes, we held this event with the great support from the Romanian Ministry of Culture. We accessed a grant for online development of cultural events. Also, we had a great deal of support from HEMI, the Hub for the Exchange of Music Innovation, who also supported our online event. And as far as our conference goes, that was our main event for this year, for 2020. We focused a lot on the pandemic. Of course, a lot of the panels were focused on the solutions that we can find in these times. And we exchanged a lot of good practices and a lot of examples. And we really tried to figure out what there is to be done in the future. As for the current situation in Romania, right now we can hold outdoor events with a limit of 500 people. Of course, everybody needs to respect the safety measures and people have to wear a mask, and indoor events are still forbidden. We can have, I think, private events up to 20 people, but that's it. And indoor restaurants have only been open for about 2 weeks, I think. So it's still something that we are assessing. The number of daily cases is on the rise in Romania as well. So we had a big jump a couple of weeks ago, and now we are at around 1,600-700 cases daily, new cases daily. So it's still, it feels like a stretch to plan too much into the future, because we don't really know how the situation will develop. And we do have, as I said, some outdoor events happening now, but the weather is getting colder, and soon we will have no option to hold indoor events. So we're really probably, yes, we have really no idea what's going to happen in the next month.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we can talk about the solutions that you found at your conference later a bit more.
Yes, of course.
Thomas, maybe now you can tell us how you have been affected in Sonic Visions. What kind of measures did you take?
Yeah, I think it's quite easy. We're hosting the festival each year, normally in November, but we're also running a venue with capacities of the shows up to 6,500. And we had our last event on the 12th of March. Since then, we're closed. And we won't host any shows this year. So that's it. 2020 is over. And it's actually the same with the festival. We had been thinking about doing some online or hybrid versions, but we were not convinced of the concept for our festival. We are still hoping to some better times that might be ahead, maybe next year, or hopefully, but we don't know. So we are in a situation where we can't predict what the future will bring. We are not in control of the situation. Everything will change. We do not find any sustainable solution to do what we are doing right now when it comes to terms of business. So business is completely down for us at the moment. When we will be doing Sonic Visions, we will be doing it next year in spring, and maybe there will be a solution to meet again. probably not, but that's only my personal opinion. Then we will definitely switch to an online format, but not with streaming, but more with pre-recorded content, snippets, anything between 10 and 15 minutes, like tutorials, like speeches on different topics, and which needs quite a long time to prepare, and which will definitely, business-wise, also be not a huge success. That's for granted. So yeah, that's our situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. Yeah, for everyone, very uncertain times. Didier, I don't know, do you want to add something from your side, from IMPALA, about your current situation?
Well, as I mentioned in my short presentation, I think the situation is slightly different for record labels, but everyone has noted to which extent we are actually interlinked with the live music sector. At this point in time, we can still release records, but nowadays most of the income is done by artists through touring, and basically the music venues are more or less closed everywhere, or you can only organize shows with very limited audiences. And the whole idea of actually touring through Europe at the moment is pure science fiction. It's absolutely impossible. Never mind the question of when will we see US artists or non-European artists touring across Europe. I think I will have to agree with Thomas. I don't want to sound overly pessimistic, but it's going to probably take a lot of time. An aspect I would like to raise from a personal perspective that I find quite strange, and that probably brings us back to that need to talk more to national governments and to the EU, is the discrepancy in the approach between sectors of the economy. And I'll give you an example. I will tell you about my Friday night here in Charleroi. I first went to football. That was the first game where people could go back to the stadium, not at full capacity, but there were 5,000 people in a stadium of 15,000. After that game, I went to a show in my local venue called Roscheck in Charleroi, in the main hall that has a capacity of 2,000. There were 125 people there, all seated with masks and all that. Although one could argue that football is an outdoor activity, which is technically not true. You go through stands, you're indoor at some point. I'm just wondering why, on one hand, you can go to 33% capacity. On the other, you're basically at 5, 6, or 7%. I'm not criticizing the people running the football teams, and all the best to them, but it really begs questions in how we are as countries, as governments, how we are reacting to that pandemic. Never mind the fact that there are different approaches to different businesses in one country, but this would be completely different from one country to another. And the need for a unified approach is clearly there. I think as European citizens, we do not even understand where we can travel to and if we can travel. So what we need are ready-made solutions. At this point in time, anyone, especially in the live music sector, is still investing in small events is at risk of making huge losses. The business is slowly turning into a gamble, and we need, I think, a unified approach.
Okay.
Can I add something here? It's very cool to think of an all European approach to the pandemic, and maybe to introduce some regulations that every country could count on. But for example, in Germany, Natascha, it's for every county it's different. Like you have different regulations in Berlin than in Hamburg, and even not the biggest country in Europe manages it to have like one regulation for the entire country. And so I think for the whole Europe, it's pure science fiction again.
Yeah, I think the problem is, I think football, soccer, they did a better job in lobbying, fair enough. On the other hand, the evolution and how to tackle with the pandemic situation has been changing. So we had this national regulations in more or less all countries over Europe, let's say, with shutdowns on the national level, all the same rules applied everywhere. And then more or less every country, again, they switch to a more local view. Yeah, so you have, for example, you have Germany, where the decision of what needs to be done, what can be done, is on the very lowest level of organization. It's with the cities. Yeah, even France, who are not that famous for giving power of decision to anyone outside of Paris. They are now working with green and red zones, and there are different departments that are put under quarantine, and it's also going to city level. So I think we will see that how the pandemic situation will be dealt with by the authorities. It will be very it will become much more precise. So, and every tour planning will just be dependent on the actual situation in this community. But for us, for example, in Luxembourg, there is also another situation. We're not in the distances to the borders. Yeah, we're not talking about kilometers. We're talking about meters, maybe. Yeah. So will our audience, will they be allowed to cross the border or not in 2 weeks or in 2 months, coming from France or coming from Germany or whatever? Or do they need to go for 10 or 14 days into quarantine when they watch the show at our festival? Yeah. So we are not in control of the situation. And I don't think we will get this control when it comes to the live business.
Another aspect of this, as Didier said, there is a sort of double standard in how governments deal with this. And we've experienced this in Romania also, not in terms of what is permitted and what is not permitted to do, but in terms of government support, financial support given to different sectors. And it's, as Thomas said, a matter of lobby, I presume. And we found that, for example, our government was very keen to support the industry sector and the commercial sector, not as much the cultural sector. We came about last. There was some support, but a lot of people said that it was only like facade support, not really helpful. And when you wanted to apply to those grants, it was actually a rabbit hole of bureaucracy and very, very difficult to actually access the funds that were touted by the government. And what happens now recently is that the government pledged support to a number of major festivals in Romania. So a number of, I think, 4 or 5 major festivals. We're talking maybe an attendance of more than 10,000 people, every one of them. And this begged the question, well, what about the smaller enterprises? Well, what about the smaller festivals? And a lot of local actors, a lot of smaller venues, and a lot of independent artists are feeling a bit left out of this whole scheme. So everybody's helping the big guys, but somehow they're glossing all over us. And it does sort of make some sense from an economic perspective, because those are the guys that bring in a lot of money and their losses are great, but also a lot of livelihoods depend on our sector as well, the mid-range, the smaller venues. So yes, this sort of discrimination, if you'd like, is something that we have to see how we were going to deal with it in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a good point to...
Can I add something here again?
Oh, sure.
I think that's exactly the biggest problem, because like the big companies, the big promoters, like they are in some international network. Most of them are owned by multinational companies. They can apply for funding for like the workforce and everything. and the really small promoters or the really small companies are quite good as well, because most of the people who are promoting festivals with up to 500 people are not doing this as a day job, because like they are working somewhere in a bank or anywhere else, and they're doing it as a hobby or something. They will survive as well. I think the most problematic are the mid-sized companies and the mid-sized promoters. Like for us, example, like in our company, there are 7 people working. So we are not owned by a multinational that backs us with some funds they have, and we are doing this for like the daily business, and we can't access any funding at all because this is not created for us, and we also can't exit to anything else. And I think that's the biggest problem, because the mid-sized companies are the companies that bring a diversity to the business. These are the companies that really keep everything up, and I think most of them won't survive this crisis.
Yeah, the question I think is also what are the effects on the long term, pandemic now, but also post-pandemic afterwards, because I think what will happen and what is already happening is that the revenue streams that for the artists, they change, they switch, yeah, and they are in the need to focus on different revenue streams than before, and which they need to do because they need to make their living, yeah. Different business models will be stronger. Didier talked about the streaming and everything, which will lead to change in habits also in the long term. So we also, I think, we need to consider what are the effects on the long term, even on a post-pandemic context for us as a business.
Yes, I think what I want to ask you as well is like, what developments do you expect to happen in the future? Like, you already touched upon some issues or some points that you came up with as solutions, like hybrid events or live streaming and stuff. What role do you think they will play in the future? And also in terms of revenue, will that be enough to make up for the losses of the lack of events, or what do you think what the developments will be?
Actually, I think we've with you, if you look at the live industry, we always said nothing can replace the live experience. Yeah. So this is in the core of what we are doing, and then we need to ask our question: will this still be valid in the future? I personally think yes, definitely, but in which context? Yeah, maybe we were also a bit in a victim of our success, because I think one point why we are not that well organized when it comes to lobbying on a national European level is that we were a victim of our success, because our industry was booming and booming and booming. The events and the festivals, they went bigger and bigger and bigger from year to year. We had this first crisis only 2 years ago. Last year, more people in our industry had been talking about it. But this will definitely, the crisis will definitely amplify this evolution, and we need to think, when we're talking about festivals, what business models will be sustainable in the future. Will festivals with 50, 60, 70,000 people still be something people will be longing for? Or will be there maybe more an evolution towards boutique festivals or whatever? How will the industry as a whole, how will they perceive and need the live sector when it comes to artists, for example, when it comes to labels? Yeah, how will they judge the live music sector as a means of communication and and as a business channel for themselves in the future? I think this we need to ask ourselves.
And I think basically in the end it comes down to the behavior of the consumer. If like the people go back and as Tom said already, want to go to big festivals again, and not to only one festival a year, but to 4 or 5 and spend a real bunch of money for the tickets, the festivals will come up and rise again. But that's the same thing with the streaming events and streaming or broadcasting of pre-recorded shows. As long as the consumer is not ready to pay for online content, this will not be a business model at all, because you can't do that all with sponsoring or with funding, with public funding, because one long-term or one short-term effect of the pandemic will be that the fundings will go down, because all the governments are spending now all the money they haven't got in the future. And already some of our funding partners told us this year that this will be the last year that we get that much of money from them, because next year they are not going to have as much money to spend, and all the fundings will go down. So I think it's the whole industry or the whole branch, the music sector, will really be not like it was before next year. And I think this can be a chance for new concepts, new ideas, maybe. But there will be a really quite a big dropout for lots of organizations and structures in the music sector.
And also an important aspect, I think, is that, well, for a bit of context, I work in Bucharest with Overground Music, which is an agency that I started with my colleagues some 7 or 8 years ago. And we manage a lot of artists. So also, aside from the Mastering the Music Business Conference and the festival, I also get to work directly with artists and have the whole management aspect perspective. And we tried to, so as far as solutions to the new situation go, we tried to release a platform of online content, and it's basically a pre-recorded concerts platform, and we have there a lot of concerts from our artists, but also other Romanian artists, and we envisioned it as a sort of monthly subscription fee based. So on paper, it sounded like a great idea, and we thought, well, great, all people that want to see a live concert will go there. But very quickly, we found out that no, that doesn't happen. It's actually a whole new different business than the one we were used to work in. It's not about the music business at all. It's about it's the video streaming business, which is something totally different. It works with very different rules than what we were expecting to, and people relate to it in a very different way. Suddenly, we weren't managing, these big artists. Suddenly, we were competitors to Netflix. We found ourselves that feedback from people was that, well, your monthly fee is a lot more expensive than I pay for Netflix, and the content, of course, is content pool is a lot smaller, and they have a point, but on the other hand, we have it's the only possible way that we found to function, right, in this. So it's the only model that made sense after some careful consideration. And so, suddenly we tried to find a solution for our market, for the music market, and we went and became basically very, very small competitors in the subscription video fee market. So what I'm trying to say is that the challenge right now is that we have to find ways to function in whole new industries that we weren't really equipped for right now with our knowledge and our experience. So as far as trying to find new solutions goes, this is a challenge. It can be an opportunity, but the difficulties of getting there are even greater than they seem from this point.
When it comes to solutions, maybe the others of you, what can you add? Like, what do you think could be solutions for the music industry to deal with the situation?
The global trend we are witnessing, and that we will have to handle to some extent, is that the digitalization of the music world is getting faster and faster. It's been made really visible through the pandemic, but it's actually something that's coming on top of ongoing developments. There's obviously that big discussion on streaming about the remuneration models that are currently developing. You know, that Deezer is pushing for that user-centric payment model instead of the good old system-centric. So the question is, would this in the long run have an impact on the income of at least some artists? At the same time, we are also in Europe, at least in the EU, in the process of implementing the copyright directive. Now, I know that sounds terribly boring, but you've probably all heard about that infamous Article 17, which aims at tackling the so-called value gap. And the question is also the licensing of music by numerous platforms. And I guess the elephant in the room when we discuss that is probably YouTube. But should those platforms actually pay more for the use of music? I think we are getting out of a period where music was nearly free for a lot of people. That was a consequence of piracy. I know that for people in Western Europe, that may sound like a thing of the past, but in some Eastern European countries, it's still quite rampant. And the big issue here is actually to manage to do properly that digitalization turn and see how we can apply it properly to the music sector. But as it's been mentioned by Thomas, I think that live streaming will never replace the proper live music experience, if only because the proper live music experience is something it's not just putting someone in front of a band playing. It's a social experience, it's a physical experience. And basically, I think to succeed in paying live streams, you need to, as an artist, to offer something that's literally out of the ordinary. And that's going to be difficult and costly.
Yeah, for example, I just received, yesterday I received a mail by an American blues artist, Joe Bonamassa, to join his live from his living room show, and you could buy tickets that were for the stream anything between 20 and they are selling VIP packages, digital VIP packages as well, up to I think some $80 or whatever. So artists, they are definitely looking how to rearrange their revenue streams. But again, it always will be a substitute. But on the other hand, what makes our situation in the live industry so different from the rest of the industry, part of it, is that we are not in control of the content. So we can't control the content. And this is why our we can talk about challenges, we can talk about opportunities, but if you're not in control of the content, this is limited.
I think there is something Thomas said right now, like there is one word, substitute. I think online streaming or pre-recorded shows broadcasted can only be successful if it's something unique, if it's something that you can't experience when you're watching a live show. I don't know what it could be exactly, if it's maybe a location or an approach, or maybe it's some information that you get about the artist that you can't like communicate when you're doing a show. But I think it only can be successful if it's something unique and not just a substitute for a live show. And maybe that could be something then which still could exist when live shows are possible again.
To touch on this, I think the key here, and we observed this with some of our artists during the lockdown especially, is that I think we will see a return to a lot more personal communication between artists and their audience. So I think we're slightly going to go back to the DIY days of the artists having their monthly newsletter towards their fans and giving away special perks and just having a much more humane and direct contact with their audiences in order to make a sort of connection like this meaningful. Of course, as you all said, it has to go a bit beyond just watch this show and that's it. We put 5 cameras in front of the band and we're streaming it, and that's it. It has to come from a personal place. It has to be about a connection. People, especially in the lockdown, we saw that people were striving for the human connection, and it was easy to have successful streaming shows in the lockdown because there were really no alternatives. And we had, with 2 or 3 of our bands, we had some streaming shows sponsored by a local phone company, and they were hugely successful. They were free. The streaming shows were free. Also, people could pay for a ticket if they wanted to support the band. A lot more people paid for the tickets than we would have anticipated. So it was a big success in that perspective, only because people were hungry for that connection. They were hungry for connection between themselves because everybody was in their homes. It was lockdown still. They were hungry for connection with the band. The band, was very, very keen on absorbing all that energy that came from the audience. So it was a very special energy exchange back then. And I think what we need to do as far as the future goes, of course, will be a lot more alternatives, so people will get a lot more options to spend that energy and to get that energy back from. But the key is that the communication between artists and audiences has to become a lot more personal, and I think we have to go back really to the old school DIY days of putting a personal touch on everything. So we'll see the rise of personal videos shot by artists to particular fans. We'll see the rise of special editions, autographing as far as merchandise goes, and everything that carries a very deeply personal connection will be a lot more valued than just filming a live show and transmitting it on YouTube or another platform, and that's it. The key is to go back to the core and develop the personal connection.
Actually, I would agree, but I would say that in the end, it's not about DIY, but it's more about, the whole industry has been talking for years about direct to fan and everything. So if you're in control of your content, this is an opportunity for yourself. And then we are talking about collecting data and how we can, how this data can be used afterwards. And so we could, we need to imagine also, we as a live industry, we need to figure out how this data by the industry will be used in the end. So it will be maybe doing the direct-to-fan. This will enable you to have access to more data, to plan your tour, for example, more in detail, maybe to sell your tickets directly to your fans. And maybe we as a venue, for example, we will deal with band management more than with agents. We will see.
For us at Waves, it was quite interesting and funny because we had 74 pre-recorded shows we broadcasted online, and there was no restrictions for the artists. They could do whatever they want for this 20 to 30 minutes in their show. And we got so many different shows delivered by the artists. And it was quite interesting to see through the broadcast how numbers were going up and how numbers were going down. For example, there was one girl, the show was, she was sitting on her bed and playing on a piano and singing to it, and she didn't say anything. And it was like after 3 minutes, the viewers dropped down to almost zero. Then there was a show for, it was an Austrian artist, Oscar. They did a one shot for 25 minutes. And like they were playing on different places in their house. Like there was one song in the staircase, and the singer, she was talking into the camera and was telling a story, while the band was picking up the instruments in the back, and they're running around and building it up in the courtyard. And then she was walking to the courtyard and started immediately with the next song. And it was really great. And you could see like the entry viewers were not dropping down, they were going up, going up, going up. And that's exactly what you should think of, like using the media for you, using the media channel and trying to create something unique. And of course, this Oscar thing is, again, as you said, DIY, but there was a Portuguese band, Wales. They rented a rooftop space in Lisbon and did a show there. And they filmed it with a drone flying around it. And they had loads of lights there. It was a great show. That was not DIY. That was really, really very, very hard work of thinking of it, concepting it. And that's exactly what you could do. And that also adds to live shows. Maybe you could do again later on. This can be unique content for VIP packages or anything. And I think that's exactly what Tom said. If you're in control of the content, you can do whatever you want. You can think of different varieties and how to present your possible buyers and viewers and listeners something unique for them, a unique experience that adds up to a live experience at the club.
Yeah, but I think there's one thing we should also mention and not underestimate, which something which I, during the pandemic crisis, nearly forgot, to be honest. I'm part of a small association, and we do a festival in our village in the church once a year. Yeah, and we had those discussions: do we maintain? Do we postpone? Whatever. And we said no, we do it. Yeah. Okay, instead of having 400 people in the church, we ended up with having, I think, 78 or 79 as a maximum capacity. But what really struck me on that night was how the artists, they were touched personally with the possibility to perform before an audience. They said, hey, we haven't been performing for 6 months now. This is great. Yeah, and you could see how they were touched. And this is, I think, comes back to what makes life so special. Not only for the audience, but also for the artist. Because the artist, he needs this contact and exchange with his audience.
Also, and one last thing I want to add to this topic is that what we discovered during streaming shows is that we somehow reached a part of the audience that we never ever reached with the live gigs, and that is people who live in cities that are not in the live music circuit. And so in Romania, we only have probably 5 or 6 major cities, including Bucharest, in which live events happen regularly, and it's what we call the live circuit. But other than that, there are a lot of smaller cities, I mean, with sizable population still, who are not really into this circuit, and who maybe don't have appropriate venues, or don't have appropriate conditions, or there are not local promoters that are willing to book any of our bands that we work with. And so there are people living in cities where our bands never ever set foot in. They never played in some of these cities, and yet by having these streaming experiences, we could make them part of our community, and we gave them access. We empowered them basically to have access to these sorts of events. Also, there are communities of Romanians living abroad in Germany or in Switzerland or in the UK, and also they never really had the opportunity to see these bands play in a very long time, since they left the country maybe, or ever. And it was also a very important connection with them as well, because finally they could witness a live performance by some of these bands that they really cared about. So what I mean to say is also being forced to go into live streaming of events also opened for us this new audience that we never really got to in any other way. And it would have been impossible for us to play live to these people. But suddenly, by having an online streaming event, we could bring all these people together and make them a part of our community.
Thank you for this more positive note that the new circumstances. Yeah, sure, you can. I think we have 10 more minutes or something.
Okay, I would like to bounce back on 2 words that Cosmin has been using, which are community and DIY. Another data I did not get the chance to show that's been quite interesting in pandemic time is that some niche genres of music have actually seen significant increase in consumption. The biggest one is probably classical music. Classical music has always been the poor kid in streaming, and probably the segment of the genre of music losing the most from moving to streaming. But it's also been noticed in other subgenres such as ambient or dark folk or gothic folk and the likes. So I wouldn't say those are DIY, not at all, but we're talking probably about close-knit communities of music fans that will feel they can relate to other people listening to the same music. And what we have witnessed, at least in Belgium and the Netherlands very recently, is that for some genres, with the fact that you can actually run very small shows, you see the development of events actually aimed at very specific communities of people. So people who are basically interlinked through their music taste. And the idea of those events is actually to gather them. Sometimes even, I know the Ghent label, Consoling Sounds, is running such an event shortly in Ghent, with the idea of doing a 24 hours deep listening session, which is basically spending a lot of time with like-minded people, like-minded artists. And obviously the tickets will be much more expensive than they would be for just your regular little show, but they come with like full package of records, merchandising and all that. And I think that it's actually something that's probably going to be accelerated through the current situation. This is not a model that could be applied to major artists, but I thought it was interesting. And I'll quote actually Neil from Consoling Sounds, who told me like, we have a community that could probably fill the Sport Palace in Antwerp, knowing it's the biggest venue in Belgium. We could probably fill it with all of them quite a few times in a row, but our problem is that they are spread through different countries and through different continents. So the whole issue of community is the key word in their business plan, dare I say.
Yeah, but I think in the end, it's the question, will out of these initiatives and ideas and events, will there be some kind of output which will be even midterm-wise sustainable?
Probably not in the long run. I think you need a mix of both. But in current times, I mean, I think it's interesting to do that. Well, it's not community work. Obviously, community work means something else, but working on the development of such communities, because it could probably lead to bigger things in the future and in a normal world. But I definitely hear you. That would not work with a full capacity rock hall, for example, and you need a full capacity rock hall at some point. I hear you.
I mean, that's the question. We are always talking about full capacities. Yeah, when we're talking about sold out festivals, we are talking about sold out venues that we need to do our business. In the end, we might come to a point where we have to put this really into question. Because in the end, it's a collaboration of the whole industry. And if we need to find, in even the midterm, long-term, saying to cover the whole of next year, we need to find concepts where we need to talk about still pandemic situation, reduced capacities, whatever. We need to work on offers for our clients that take care of the actual conditions, but that provide them with a positive atmosphere and a positive experience.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we almost have to come to an end.
Yes. I mean, we heard a very interesting discussions, and I think it's precious, let's say, for that experience. I think it's very good that we have also that point of view from discography. On the other side, we have guys from event. I'm also representing event, and I know how hard it was, how hard Corona hit all of us, especially we planned at the same time as Romanian guys our Kontakt, but we decided at the end, of course, to postpone and to cancel actually, so because this is online, it's not what we plan to do this year. I think it's important maybe for next year, of course. We don't know what will happen the next months, but definitely we will have some changes of dates for showcases. So I think it will be good if we coordinate that through the INES network, just to know who will do. We definitely won't do in March, definitely. I mean, for example, men decide to go in June, not in February. Simon just announced that yesterday. So that is one thing. The other is thank you once more. I hope that we will have opportunity to see each other in Belgrade next year. Let's say in vivo, face to face, not like this. What is important now for us, all those experience, because we were now trying to reach, let's say, some kind of unity. At the end of today's discussions, at the end of the day, we will have a local panel with the people from let's say, Serbian Music Association, and we will try to initiate some let's say, statement or initiative for our government, because at this point we don't have any support from them. And on the other hand, let's say, there are a lot of initiatives and also very good, let's say, practice in all around Europe, from Sweden, Germany, For example, yesterday in Slovenia there was one big initiative. They even asked for a resign of Minister of Culture if he doesn't answer. So I think it's very good to have, like, let's say, solidarity between us, and that is very important for these days and for next month. I think we have like few minutes more because we need to prepare for next presentation from Austria. But if you have anything to say, mic is yours. That's it. No, nothing. No last words. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you once more, and keep in touch. And you know, let's share what we have from ideas and experience. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank
Take
you
care.
very much.
Take
Bye.
care. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Is it kind of weird that you don't ever look back? Running, running, finding signs that say that you're not mine. Searching, searching, looking, lines written in my mind, but there's nothing I can find.
me čujete? Do you hear me? Hello? Yes. We'll go in 3 minutes, sorry. In 3 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
I will do some short introduction of, you know,
So I'm not Italian, unfortunately.
Okay, we're on. Tatyana Domany is with us. Austrian Music Export is a service and research center for exporters of contemporary Austrian music in all genres and aspects, recordings, live, sync, etc. This includes providing access to information of Austrian artists and companies, building a sustainable network of industry professionals and media, providing travel support and representing Austrian music at international trade shows, conferences, and festivals. So, hello again. Hello, Tatyana. We will have now one presentation of Austrian music export. And Tatyana, my microphone is yours.
Thanks, Marko. Thanks for having me in Belgrade today. It's good to have some international contact. We've been stuck at home in Vienna for the last couple of weeks and months, as everybody at the moment. And we've been trying to wrap our head around what's going on and how we can be of any help to our sector and our networks. And I will talk a little bit about Austrian Music Export, what we do, who we are, how we developed in the last years, and the challenges we are facing right now. It's a tough situation, and I think nobody has real tangible solutions at the moment. So it's good to have some exchange and talk about maybe ideas that we could work on together. And for a start, Austrian Music Export is an organization that was made up by two different initiatives. One is the Austrian Music Fund, where I personally work, We're a funding organization that provides money for audio productions, album recordings for local artists, and to support in Austria and abroad. And our partner company is MIKA, the Music Information Center Austria, which is more focused on information services, workshops, community initiatives, and efforts like this. And we teamed up around 10 years ago. You can see a lot of logos on my slide there, which is good because we have a rather broad support. And we managed to bring together different partners, both from the official side, like the Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also from the music sector, like the Austrian Collecting Societies, IFPI, and organizations that are more focused on the music part. And together we decided on some programs that we thought could help the music sector in Austria. And we focus a lot also on international initiatives together with organizations like IMI, for example, which collects all the European export initiatives, or the ITER program. So we try to work mainly, of course, for the Austrian artists, but also take a European approach in working together internationally. And as you can see here, some pictures from better times when people were actually able to go see live shows and meet each other. As you know, we're kind of neighbors. So Austria is a rather small country, and 10 years ago, the situation was not as good as in bigger markets. We saw that the physical market was in decline as everywhere else. And the streaming market only grew like year by year until it became really relevant enough to make up for the loss of money in the physical sector. And we figured back then that we would focus mostly on the live industry, because we saw a chance there for Austrian artists to overcome the small home market and go abroad, find new audiences, and make a living out of touring. Of course, this is not possible at the moment. So we are constantly thinking about new ideas, new programs that we can come up with to support the sector in other ways. And as you can see here, what we did back in 2010, 2011 was set up a couple of different routes. One is to inform the people, to get them more professionalized, both the artists and the teams, like managers, record labels, agents, so they are able to build up international networks for themselves, and then offer real monetary funding in tour support, showcase support. We do a lot of festival cooperations where we bring artists to international festivals, do invitations for music pros to come see the Austrian artists perform, and then fund the tours that ideally come out of this. And we try to do this in most genres. Of course, there's limitations, but we work with pop bands, rock bands, indie, jazz, world music, and as well in contemporary or new music in Austria. We also have local partnerships. You just probably saw Thomas from Waves Festival in Vienna, which has been a partner for us from the start. So we work together on a lot of different international initiatives. And we have local festivals that we use to work by inviting international media, for example, to come see the festival or the club, to get an idea of what the Austrian music scene is like. So how do we do it? One major part, especially with young people trying to come into the music scene, or with young artists, is to get information to them. So we do a lot of workshops. We talk about all different topics that might be interesting for them. We have a service where they can come to us and get really personal advice and input, especially for contracts. So if an artist teams up with an international partner and has an international contract made up, they can come and check it for free, so they don't fall into any pitfalls of the music industry. And we saw over the last 10 years that this has really helped develop more networks on the one hand, locally and internationally, and also it upped the level of knowledge within the music industry. So people are more fluent in how the different sectors work together, how they should secure the rights, and how they can approach international careers, especially if they come from a small, maybe not so professional market like Austria. And another thing that's equally important is tour support. I don't know if something like this is in place in Serbia already, but we found this really made a difference when we were able to help artists fund international showcases. So they can get a small amount of money from us if they perform at one of the main music trade fairs or showcase festivals, if they want to present themselves internationally. And then we can also fund to a small extent, but still international touring up to €5,000. And we have a rather close-knit network with the Austrian embassies and cultural forums abroad. So they are based in the main cities all over the world, and they will support artists directly. They will put on shows themselves, or they have local partners. So we try to use them as a European network of outings for younger artists who don't have already a chance to perform bigger shows. As I said, our big focus was on the live industry in the last 10 years. And we realized that the main trade fairs like Midem or Popcom back then, they were slowly replaced, or new forms evolved in showcase festivals. And we started to work with Reeperbahn Festival, with Eurosonic Festival and the Great Escape, which are the bigger ones in Europe, and the most important one for us. Especially Germany is, for Austria, it's really the most important international market, and it's usually the market where people will go first because we share a joint language and the structures are quite similar. So we would do this by just basically renting a club within the festival and bringing Austrian artists there, try to do a lot of promotion before and at the festival itself, and use them as a stage for young Austrian artists. But we are also really big fans of the smaller festivals. For example, we work a lot with Ment Festival, which you guys probably know, in Ljubljana. So we take a rather regional approach as well, and try to work with the neighboring countries around Austria. From the very beginning, we had a focus on Eastern Europe, because we figured that especially Vienna is so uniquely located in Europe, and like the main cities like Bratislava, Ljubljana, Zagreb, Budapest, Prague, they are so close to us, even closer than some parts of western parts of Austria itself, that we should really try to build a substantial network in these countries there. And we hope that we can also use this regional approach now in the pandemic, if Austrian artists are probably not able to go to the UK or the US, which are obviously the main music markets that a lot of artists still focus on. They still want to tour the UK or the US, but of course it's much more financially difficult for them to do at the moment. The same has been true for Waves Festival. From the beginning, it has focused on an approach East meets West. So this means once a year in September, we try to get a lot of people come to Vienna, go see the clubs and meet the Austrian industry. And they have a chance to talk about all different topics during the conference, which was this year a digital event. So we had a small capacity of people on the ground in Vienna, but most of it was streamed online, of course. Together we choose each year different focus countries, one from the western part, one from the eastern part of Europe. This year it was the UK and Ukraine. And I think we have never had Serbia, unfortunately, so maybe we should talk about this afterwards, how we can have Serbia as a guest as well in Vienna.
Why not? Why not?
I don't know. I think we always need a local partner, of course,
Yes,
who supports the local bands to come to Vienna, and that we can work with throughout this 1 year on. We do research on the local market. We try to find the most important music business professionals, important journalists, media, and try to really make connections happen. So it's not just a one-off, now we're here and now we're gone, but it's more a sustainable thing. But throughout the last 10 years, we've done quite a lot of Europe. I think there's hardly any countries we're still missing. But definitely in the East, there is still room to explore. We'd love to do Moscow, for example, or we haven't done Bucharest and Sofia. So those would be really exciting cities to work on as well. And this is our brand. We developed Austrian Heartbeats for these kind of events, which are really standalone events, really focused on the local market and the exchange with Austria. One thing that we could really develop more during the last month was our international PR and media work. So we have people working in our team, especially on this. We have, of course, a website and online channels, newsletters, Instagram accounts, playlists, whatever. And we also work with dedicated PR agencies, especially in Germany. So in March, April, rather early on during Corona, we decided that we would do more because we wanted to support people that just released their albums and were about to go on tour, but were stuck at home at this moment, and tried to do dedicated mail outs to German media, radio, but also internationally to give them a chance to at least present themselves in a more focused way on a professional level. We work, as I said, in all genres. In jazz and world music, this means we still also work with the traditional trade fairs like Womex and Jazz Ahead, but we also put on our own showcase event, which is hopefully going to happen in December in Vienna in Porgy and Bess. So this is a small club event for 2 to 3 days where we invite a small number but really high professional people who do jazz festivals, for example, to come and see the most promising young artists, so that we have a little bit more of control in who we present and who we invite. There's usually people coming from the Balkans as well, and it's a nice chance to have more personal connection than these huge trade fairs, of course. And pretty much the same is also true for contemporary music. This is a genre that needs really different approaches, because it's not as easy as just sending an indie band on tour, because you have more, for example, you have huge ensembles with much more people, where travel is, of course, more expensive than for a local smaller band. But we have this huge classical traditional heritage in Austria, which especially Vienna is world famous for. So for us, it's important to represent these genres as well. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it from my side. If you want to find out more about the programs or get in touch, just head over to our website. And as I said, we would really love to work more also with Serbia and Belgrade. Yeah. So hopefully we can meet maybe next year at Kontakt in person as well.
Well, it will be great, and thank you on this and also on this presentation. We have like few more minutes before we need to stop and to prepare for other presentation from CISAC. But for the end, now this situation about COVID is the main, let's say, topic all around the world and also in music industry. So how do you handle that? I mean, according to the fact that Austria is now really hard hit, right? Again, you have a lot of COVID patients.
Yes, it's quite weird because in the beginning we had more local problems, and then the summer has been quite good. So the numbers were going down. We had a lot of small-scale support in the communities, especially the city of Vienna tried to develop open air formats for a small number of participants so they could support at least some artists that could perform there. Quite some clubs were open, but not, of course, for the regular capacity, but rather limited numbers. But now in late August, early September, the numbers have been rising rather quickly again. But everyone anticipated that, of course, that autumn would be a difficult time. It just came by surprise that it would begin so early for us. And everybody who can is shifting back to home office again.
Yeah.
So what we've been doing, as not as the export office, but as the music fund, we've been trying to get more money and to talk to the politicians together with our partners that investment is needed in the sector right now.
Yeah.
There has been new initiatives, especially on the live side, where people that did not have like an association before now started talking internally so they can present a united front to the politicians and argue for money. But there's two political things. One is that there is an election in Vienna coming up. So this stuff like this is always difficult, of course, because people have their mind elsewhere.
Of course.
And then we have to wait for major budget decisions made by the Austrian government in the coming weeks.
Mostly you're getting money from the city or from the government, from the republic level?
More from the federal government.
Federal, yes.
But as Thomas, as was discussed in a panel before,
yes,
we are anticipating that our partners from the music side, like the collecting societies, that they will have less money next year or the coming years, of course. So we really need to up the level of public support from public money to compensate for this. And this is, the music sector is really hard to explain to politicians because it's so small scale and interlinked, and there's so many people who do stuff that's hard to explain to a politician. And in Austria, most of the public funding money anyway is going to the big theaters, the opera, to the classical music side. And we know that only like 5% of the budget each year is given to pop, rock, indie, jazz, world music. And the rest goes to the classical, the big orchestras. And we don't anticipate this to change just because we have a pandemic now. So we really need to fight for this money. And it's quite hard at the moment to know and to look ahead maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years what the best way would be to invest the money now. Because obviously, for example, in Vienna, a new club commission was founded early this year. And they have managed now to talk to a lot of the clubs and get funding on this level. But it's pretty much the same in Germany. There's no overarching music help scheme up until now. And nobody knows how it's going to look like if it comes.
We just, at the end of this day, we will have our panel, how to handle with crisis with all our, let's say, music associations, and how to push that pressure on government to help the industry, because from March there is no any help for music and event industry, which is also very important. Well, I hope, I think that is good idea to have like a cooperation. Actually, my idea was to have you in Belgrade and to have your experience as a kind of showcase for some next, let's say, initiatives in Serbia about, experience and everything else that you can provide maybe to us and help us to develop. But we will see.
We'll see.
We will see what it's. As you said, it's very hard to do any planning for next year. We don't know what we will do with Kontakt next year and when. But definitely we should, be in touch and keep in touch, and then to see what what opportunities do we have and what we can do together?
Yeah, and I think it's really important, like two things. One is to unite on a local level,
Yeah.
and also on a regional level,
Yeah.
to be better explaining what the problem actually is and how it could be solved.
Yeah.
And the other thing is also, I know this is a privileged position, of course, but to find the chances within the situation. So, for example, probably last year would not have been possible for me and Thomas to come to Belgrade because it's right after Waves and Reeperbahn Festival. But this year, making it on a digital level like this,
Yeah.
It makes connection possible in ways that we probably wouldn't have thought last year. So I think we need to also wrap our heads around these kind of chances and take on the responsibilities we really have for our sector and use it for a common good.
Yeah. Super. Great for the end and for conclusion. I think that your idea for regional cooperation is very good, and maybe we should do some initiative together and to prepare something for some Zoom meeting, not like this. I mean, not so big like this, but why not ex-Yugoslavia plus Austria plus Albania plus Hungary. I mean, this region is have some opportunities in cooperation, not not
of course.
by,
Yeah,
yes.
And we have a long winter ahead.
Yeah,
all of us. So there's
Yeah.
plenty of time for Zoom meetings.
Yeah. Thank you once again, Tatyana, and I think we should work on something on some new projects together.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Goodbye. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Hello again. We are now going with our last presentation for today. It's my pleasure and honor to present Mr. Mitko Chatalbashev from CISAC, Regional Director for Europe. Mitko has been a Regional Director for Europe at CISAC since October 2003. At CISAC, European Regional Office located in Budapest, Mitko is mainly responsible for relations with CISAC members from Central and Eastern Europe and Central Asia. At the implementation of CISAC policies and assistance programs in this vast region, including the implementation of the CISAC professional rules and the related verification process. So, very glad to see you, and I'm very happy to hear what you will have to present to us. We are here also Nikola from Sokoj, Nikola from OFPS, and other guys are following via Zoom. So, Mitko, microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Marko. Thank you for this opportunity to present CISAC views on the impact of COVID on the creator side, in particular on the collective management of authors' rights. And as you have rightly said, I've been the regional director of CISAC for a couple of years already, and I know very well also the situation in the Western Balkans, and I welcome very much your initiative to focus on this region and try to stimulate a debate for already, hopefully, for recovery from this COVID negative impact on our cultural and creative industry. So I'm going right now with my presentation. Just a few introductory words about CISAC, because maybe not all of your viewers know about our confederations, which is worldwide, founded in 1926. We are basically representing Society of Composers, Authors, and their music publishers. We have basically presence all over the world. In the Western Balkans, which for us is, let's say, the countries from former Yugoslavia plus Albania, we have 11 members, including our very respected member Sokoj, which has a long tradition in the field from Serbia. We do not represent only music, so we are multi-repertoire, no matter that almost 80% of the global CISAC collections are linked to the music creation. So the impact of COVID, it's not seen only in the music field, but in all the fields that are represented by CISAC. Our honorary president is Jean-Michel Jarre, and he has been just replaced in June by our new acting president, who is Mr. Björn Ulvaeus, one of the members of the Swedish group ABBA. Just to visualize our presence and our worldwide reach, we have just a couple of territories basically in Africa, in the Middle East, where we have no members, and we have 4 regional offices. And I have the pleasure again to be the head of our European one, which is based, by the way, in not far from Serbia, from Belgrade, in Hungary, in Budapest. And we have been focusing a lot in promoting authors' rights and their protection in Central Eastern Europe, and in particular in the Western Balkans area. In 10 to 15 minutes, I plan to update you on the actions that CISAC has taken to mitigate the negative impact of the COVID pandemic on creators and CISAC members, and also some of the measures that our members, including Sokoj in Serbia, have taken to defend the authors' rights and the rights of their members. And we hope these measures will soon put us on a recovery path and not only on the defense line as we were in the first months of the pandemic. Right after the first lockdown started, our then President Jean-Michel Jarre, together with our 4 vice presidents, all very renowned creators from all creative sectors, we have sent a strong letter to all governments, and this letter was reflected in the main outlets in media all over the world, where basically we warned that the current crisis is unprecedented threat to the creative people, and we called on all the governments to take immediately measures in support of creators, and what is more important, governments not only to provide immediate support, but already to think on the recovery of this negative impact of the pandemic. Then again, upon initiative of our then President Jean-Michel Jarre, we, in April, this was in mid-April, we launched a joint campaign with UNESCO, which campaign was widely publicized, and maybe you've heard about this, or at least our members in the countries, including in the Western Balkans, were involved. So it was joined, the so-called Resiliart movement, together with initially with UNESCO in partnership with CISAC, basically to raise awareness on the impact of COVID-19 on the culture and creative sector, and to mobilize the global community and to start lobbying the policymakers and governments worldwide. It is very interesting that during the first ever session in the Resiliart movement, we had also an active contribution from the Minister of Culture of Croatia, Mrs. Nina Koržinek, I hope I pronounced correctly, which gave, right now on this World Forum, she gave also the perspective of Croatia and of the neighboring countries and on the need of support. Then this Resiliart initiative developed, and in April 22nd, there was a big online, unfortunately, conference of more than 130 Ministers of Cultures. Most of the Ministers of Cultures or high officials from the Western Balkans, including Serbia, participated. And this was, again, a nice opportunity to sensibilize governments about the need to support the creative and cultural sector in these very, very heavy, unprecedented times. And then I will give you some figures on the concrete impact on society's collections, respectively distributions to creators in our specific area of collective management of authors' rights. The debate with UNESCO continued with direct discussions with the creators and singers, songwriters, literary authors, film composers, and this third part of the Resiliart event took place on the middle of May, and from now on, this is going on a country-by-country basis. So I'm kindly encouraging you, Marko, and our colleagues in Serbia in all sectors, you to continue with this Resiliart, basically dialogue between impacted stakeholders and the government to find the best measures on a country-by-country basis. We are ready to support any Serbian or Western Balkan initiative in this field. So this was this big, huge global public awareness and lobbying campaign that CISAC undertook, and trying to sensibilize governments in partnership with UNESCO. Now I am giving you a few key figures on the exact impact of COVID-19 on society's collections. Unfortunately, I cannot yet present you the latest figures for 2019 because the CISAC Global Collections Report for 2019 is supposed to be issued in the beginning of November. So we have embargoed most of the data, but you can get the flavor if I show you the figures, the global CISAC collections of all our more than 230 members all over the world. Of course, we have a very powerful members that collect millions and distribute to creators, and we have many small territories and small societies that are struggling to collect the royalties for copyright owners. But this big collective in 2018, they collected close to 10 billion euros. And of these 10 billion euros, almost 1/5, close to 2 billion, were the digital collections, which are still relatively low comparing to the other sources of income for societies and creators, meaning broadcasting, live concerts, and licensing of bar, restaurants, hotels. And I will give you some figures about this next one. But so we may expect reasonably to say that in 2019, which was the peak year before the COVID impact, probably the global CISAC collections, when we make final figures, will reach 10 billion euros. But now, what are showing our preliminary estimates by thoroughly checking and collecting data from our members all over the world? So there is a devastating impact. Societies in 2020 and up to 2021, because the forecast for 2021 is even worse, they expect losses ranging from -20 to -35% and in the overall collections. In the sectors that have been heavily touched by the COVID lockdown restrictions, namely the life sector and the public performance in hotels, bars, restaurants, the losses are reaching up to 80%, which are huge amounts. And this is especially painful for the societies in Central and Eastern Europe, and including in the Western Balkans, because due to several number of reasons we have no time now to discuss, digital is still very low as a source for income source for creators. So we traditionally, in this part of Europe, we rely on the traditional sources like broadcasting and live concerts and public performance licensing in bars and hotels and other venues. And this has been basically almost dead for a couple of months in this part of Europe as well. That's why societies, of course, digital has boomed in all over the world. So societies that already had higher digital collections, mainly big societies, will be able to benefit, but smaller societies that traditionally still rely on these traditional sources, as I mentioned, will be severely hit by this crisis, and respectively their creators. And losses to collections and respectively distributions are expected to be much higher, in fact, in 2021, because in 2020, most of our members, at least in the first half of 2020, have been distributing the money that they had collected in 2019, which was a very good year. So in 2021, they shall distribute what they had collected in 2020, which, as I mentioned above, as of today is from -20 to -35, in some countries even more, lower income. And this, of course, has a severe impact on the livelihood of many creators represented by CISAC members all over the world. What has been the response of our members, including of our member Sokoj, because we have also data about Sokoj. In Central and Eastern Europe, the role of the CMOs is even greater than in other Western, let's say, European countries, because we are in general on a lower economical level, and the budgets of our, especially ministries of cultures, are on the bottom line. So societies have been really the first ones, due to their social and economical reserves and deductions that they are allowed to have by laws, and they have different reserve funds, to immediately to set up some amounts to help to the creators in need, to the retired, to the sick, with the low income creators. So this has been a very much appreciated step by creators. Then also what societies can do linked to their direct job is, many societies have provided for exceptional advance royalty payments. So they have paid to members earlier than normal schedules, expecting they to recoup such advances with the upcoming collections. Many societies have organized different information campaigns for their members. And of course, our societies, and also in Serbia, Sokoj, have been among the first to lobby the governments together with other stakeholders and raise awareness and request the governments to provide help by different financial and economic schemes to creators. It is worth mentioning that, especially also in your context of the work, because I know that your targeted audience is also about festivals. It's also we must note the flexibility of the CISAC members, which immediately have tried to understand the heavy economic situation of the users, because they depend on the users. So of course, for the time of the lockdowns, societies basically stopped invoicing users, or even some advance payments that were done by users beginning of the year will be recouped in the course of the year. So in fact, in this problem, societies and users are on the same side. They suffer together. They are the same side of the same coin. If the users are having a good economic turnover, societies are winning and distributing more to their creators. If users are in a heavy economic situation, this of course has a negative impact on our members and their creators. Immediately, societies have started also to develop new licensing scheme, because the lockdowns and this new reality have stimulated new usages of creative content. A lot of different online concerts have been booming in the last months. Many organizations, users started to stream their old recorded events, and all this, of course, is must be done in accordance with the authors' rights regulation, and there shall be payment, especially in these heavy times, for the creators concerned. So now we are working with different platforms to develop these new licensing models and adapt to this new reality. In this process, again, CISAC and the members of CISAC, whatever we do, we cannot cope in this heavy moment without really key intervention by the governments, and they have to play a key recovery role in this process of hopefully faster stabilization in the coming months. And here I want to draw your attention to a very important resolution adopted by the European Parliament just a few days ago, on 14th of September. The European Parliament almost unanimously adopted a resolution on the cultural recovery of Europe, where they underlined the importance of the creative sector in the European Union. Some of the Western Balkan countries are members of the European Union. Others are on the way to join the European Union. So, of course, it's very important what is happening in this union. And the European parliamentarians have drawn attention to the European Commission and the other authorities that there shall be an adequate response to the current problem. And that's why they have called for not less than 2% from the global recovery plan and fund that the European Union is planning to go for the creative sector, which is in correspondence with the heaviness of this sector, especially in the European Union. About 4% is dedicated to culture, and the contribution of the creative sector is 4% to the European Union GDP, and we have created more than 7 million jobs. It's written in this resolution. And CISAC has continued to lobby together with our members for a proper authors' rights legislation, because one of the things that governments can do, and especially in our area, is just to, I mean, in Central Eastern Europe and in the Western Balkans, is just really to enforce laws, because we know that even before the COVID crisis, in fact, the creators and authors' rights were not enough protected in our specific sub-region due to rule of law issues, economic problems, democracy transition issues. Still, authors' rights are not that respected in our region. So governments, paradoxically enough, can really help by just enforcing what they have at hand. For example, we have many so-called, we call them sleeping rights in our region. And one of these sleeping rights is the private copying. I mean, the remuneration that producers of devices shall pay to the CMOs as a kind of small levy, we call it. And that's when you pay this, the individual consumers can do freely the so-called private copying. This is a scheme that is very effective in most Western European countries. And from this scheme, now authors have benefited for different emergency measures, but it is not working in all the countries, for example, in the Western Balkans. It is working in Serbia, but with many difficulties. And now it's the time these schemes to be promoted, because easily this can bring some economic advantage and additional income to creators from something that is in the law for many years, for almost 2 decades, and has not been implemented in several countries. And last but not least, we have this big issue with, we call it transfer of value, TOF, the TOF issue. What is this with a few words? By this, we call this phenomenon by ever increasing incomes of digital platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and another digital mass users of user-generated, uploaded content that have business models that heavily rely on the content that is uploaded on their platforms. But because of outdated legislation, these users have been either denying due copyright payments to right holders or paying too small amounts. And now we have really a big breakthrough in this process. I speak here about the last year's European Union directive on the digital single market, that for the first time, and here Europe and the European Union is leading the world, for the first time they clarified the responsibility of these platforms and basically equalize such platforms to a broadcaster, and each right holder through their CMOs can now easily claim royalties for the use of music within such platforms, which have, and again, these platforms have been benefited also hugely from the COVID situation, without intention, of course, simply because people, when they are locked down, they even increase their digital streaming, the use of digital streaming services. So the call for this, now this directive will be implemented in the coming 1 year and a half, almost 2, in the European Union countries, and many countries that from the Western Balkans that are members of the EU will implement this directive. Others that are on the path to join the EU would like to align their legislation with the EU directive acquis. So this is a key directive, a key provision, and the way to solve the transfer of value and to channel more royalties and more fair share of the income that is generated by these platforms to be generated finally to the creators. And this is a particularly acute problem for Eastern Europe, where still the digital share of the royalties that our members, respectively their members, the creators, are receiving is too low. So I call for a proper implementation of this directive in all the countries, including the ones from the Western Balkans. It's a key legislation that easily can redress some of the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you. That's basically all on my side.
Thank you.
I again encourage you to explore this Resiliart option that I started with my presentation. And if you have some questions, I'm always available. Here's my mail as well. Thank you very much again for this invitation.
Thank you, Mitko. It was really useful, and all those things that you said and all those data are very important for us and also for our initiatives. As recently, maybe 2 weeks ago, Maria Gabriel, acting Commissioner for Culture in Europe, said the creative industries in 2019 employed 7.4 million people, in which 95% are small entrepreneurs, independent artists, and freelancers. This industry gets the hardest hit in Corona. So it's very important to know all those initiatives, especially for every country, not only European, but also for countries like our countries in the region and ex-Yugoslavia. But of course, for us, the most important thing is to prepare some local initiative, and we will feel free to use all your, let's say, knowledge and everything you said in your presentation. So maybe we will send you some mails or to coordinate with you those actions.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much and have a nice day.
You too. Good luck with the rest of the event.
Thank you. Goodbye. Keep in touch.
Thank you. Bye.
Evo, dobar dan na poslednjem panelu ovogodišnjeg online kontakta. U prethodnih dan i po smo imali prilike da čujemo brojne, da kažemo, interesantne stvari od ljudi, pre svega iz inostranstva, a završavamo na domaćem terenu u onom smislu koji je na neki način nama i najvažnije, a to je ipak da probamo da izvedemo nekakav zaključak i da probamo da delujemo na najbolji mogući način. Dakle, tema današnjeg panela je kako vlade mogu da pomognu u prevazilaženju krize. Svi smo svesni da je COVID na jedan užasan način promenio živote i brojne segmente društvenog života, a nažalost, što se tiče muzičke industrije, on je praktično zaustavio skroz delovanje. Ljudi se dovijaju u ovoj industriji na različite načine, na koji način da probaju da rade i da žive, jer treba imati u vidu da ovo nije pitanje samo muzičara, što se često, nažalost, i na jedan dosta banalan način predstavlja. Zaboravlja se da se muzičari uvek zovu kada su neke kritične situacije prvi kao neki prepoznatljivi ljudi da se pojave, a sada kad su u nekom kritičnom stanju, ne samo oni, već i njihove porodice, kao i svi oni ljudi koji prate taj biznis, pre svega mislim tu na brojne promotere, na agencije, na sve ljude koji se bave ovom industrijom, jednostavno ne postoji nikakvo rešenje. Dobra stvar je da se na neki način ta naša industrija organizuje sama i ja očekujem da uz ove iskustva iz sveta koje smo imali, koje su dosta interesantna, da ćemo uspeti da izađemo sa nekom inicijativom koja, nažalost, svesni smo da ova kriza još traje i da će trajati. Znači, treba ta inicijativa da se dogodi sigurno ove jeseni, zato što ne znamo kako će jesen i zima izgledati. Dakle, ja bih sad predstavio naše goste. Sa nama je Nikola Vilotić, direktor OFPS-a, Zoran Vulović Vule, dobro poznat promoter i, da kažemo, čovjek koji na brojne načine je prisutan na našoj muzičkoj sceni. Zdravo, Vule, drago mi da si ponovo tu sa nama. Nikola Čuturilo, takođe poznat muzičar, ali u ovoj situaciji i predsjednik upravnog odbora Sokoja, čovjek koji brojne pozitivne inicijative za muzičare poslednjih godina pokreće. Zdravo, Nikola. A sa nama na vezi takođe u Beogradu je i Miša Relić. Da, bitno je reći i za Vuleta i za Mišu da predstavljaju i jednu novu inicijativu koja je nedavno, da kažemo, uspostavljena, ali je već dosta na neki način prisutna, a to je Udruženje promotera. Miša je takođe vlasnik BITEFARTCAFE-a i predstavlja ovog puta i Udruženje ugostitelja. Zdravo, Mišo, preko Zooma. Ja bih krenuo od Nikole Čuturila, imajući u vidu da smo imali CISAC malo pre kao neku krovnu organizaciju i kao nekoga ko, ajde kažemo, pokreće inicijative. On je nama predložio da zajedno sa njima praktično da preuzmemo njihovu inicijativu. Ja mislim da je to dobra ideja za razmatranje i da ne na nekom od onih narednih sastanaka tu inicijativu možemo i da razmotrimo, koji se dešavaju u Sokoju, gde se i muzička industrija nalazi. Nikola, ja bih te pitao, mislim, aj sad ovako kad svi pričamo javno i na neki način u eter, kako stojimo, kako to izgleda što se tiče korone?
Prvo pozdrav svim gledalcima i slušalcima. Kad je nastupila kriza, dakle od marta meseca, prvo što smo odlučili je da radimo odgovorno u smislu poštovanja svih kriterijuma i svih normi koje su nam date. Od tog trenutka, znači, broj zaposlenih koji dolazi redovno na posao se smanjio. Napravili smo potpuno drugačiju organizaciju, ljudi rade od kuće, što je moguće i što je ostvarivo. Na ulasku u zgradu se poštuje apsolutno sve mere. Mi od početka i merimo i temperaturu i dajemo maske ukoliko ljudi nemaju, dezinfikovanje ruku, obuće. Tako da s te strane smo od prvog trenutka bili odgovorni. Nadalje, ono nešto na čemu smo kao upravni odbor insistirali je da iznađemo načina da najugroženijim članovima izađemo u susret sa nekom jednokratnom pomoći. Obzirom da imamo fond za socijalna davanja, inače, Bilo je potrebno samo da napravimo kriterijum po kome ćemo dodjeljivati ta sredstva. Dakle, kriterijum po kom je određeni autor kvalifikovan za ta sredstva. Jer Sokoj je interesna grupa, kao što ostvarivanje autorskih prava na nivou SNAF-a, pre svega interesna grupa. Znači, nije organizacija koja se bavi niti estetikom, niti radnim relacijama. Međutim, jedan ozbiljan broj ljudi ostvaruje prihode u životu ekskluzivno samo na način da su samostalni umetnici, znači nisu zaposleni, oni su slobodni strelci, što se kaže u kulturi, i oni su bili potpuno zaustavljeni marta meseca. Kad kažem oni, u vreme sebe, ja sam samostalac takođe, dakle nemam nikakvu platu, nemam nikakvu organizaciju za koju ja radim. Onda smo napravili te kriterijume koji su, znači, podrazumevali da autor ili je u statusu samostalnog umetnika, ili je nezaposlen, ili je penzioner sa minimalnim primanjima i ne ostvaruje određenu cifru na godišnjem nivou, pa ga onda sve to zajedno kvalifikuje za pomoć koju smo dodelili odmah u aprilu, što takođe smatram kao odgovoran potez, jer nismo doneli nikakvu odluku i tražili od ljudi da dokazuju ove kriterijume, nego ako se pomoć zove urgentna i hitna, onda mora da bude hitna. Znači, dodelili smo je od odluke sutradan svakome ko se prijavio i ko je bio, kako bi se reklo, applicable. Obzirom da se situacija ne smiruje, mi smo pomoć ponovili. Znači, radili smo i drugi krug pomoći koji se dogodio prošlog meseca. Dakle, po istim kriterijumima smo ljudima dali još tih simboličnih 24.000 dinara, nekom simboličnih, nekom, kako bih rekao, egzistencijalno neophodnim. Tako da to je što se tiče funkcionisanja same organizacije, nema nikakvih promena. Mi smo izašli u susret svim korisnicima koji objektivno nisu u mogućnosti da na isti način participiraju uplatama. Znači, ukoliko su objekti, ugostiteljski objekti ili klubovi bili zatvoreni, naplata je 0. Ukoliko su radili smanjenim intenzitetom, naplata je smanjena. Isto se odnosi na korisnike, na emitere koji su na minimalnim iznosima. Njima su urađena značajna ustupanja, tako da se trudimo da prosto ljudski i nekako kroz dijalog zajednički dođemo do tog nekakvog kompromisa, vodeći računa pre svega o interesima autora, ali imajući razumevanja za ljude koji su korisnici, koji su u situaciji u kakvoj jesu. Ne znam šta bih još u ovom krugu.
Ja mislim da je ovo dosta si jasno opisao, da kažem, sve aktivnosti koje je Sokoj imao kao odgovor na krizu koja je počela. Možemo u daljoj diskusiji da pričamo o nekim stvarima koje bi trebale da slede. Ali sada bi se obratio Vuletu. Vule, iz pozicije nekoga ko je privatno vrlo aktivan, da kažemo, na našem tržištu, posla nema. Mislim, ti si trudiš na sve načine, to je jasno. Evo sad si zadnje iskustvo imao sa Arsenalom, da si na kraju morao ipak online da ga uradiš. Dakle, to su užasni šokovi za nekoga ko se bavi privatnim poslom. Dakle, tako reći, nemoguć način poslovanja.
Pa ja sam tu u neke 2-3 funkcije. Prvo, kao long play, kao moju firmu koja postoji već 20 godina, mi godišnje radimo oko 80 koncerata. Ove godine smo uradili 4, znači negde smo 95% od 2019. godine. I borimo se da naš minus bude negde oko 90%. Znači, ja se nadam da ćemo do kraja godine uraditi još 4-5 koncerata, ako to bude ikako moguće. Kao Arsenal Fest, kao jedan od ljudi koji je osnovao taj festival, prošli smo, mogu slobodno reći, užasno traume. Od situacije da nam se otkaže sve, do trenutka da možemo da radimo, pa opet ne možemo da radimo. Na kraju smo ga odradili online i tu smo isto imali problema. Znači, na dan održavanja online nam je rečeno da čak ni to ne možemo da uradimo. Na kraju se sve srećno završilo. Negde u martu mesecu smo osnovali Udruženje promotera i tiketing agencija. Ja to smatram velikim uspehom, jer to prvi put da se u Srbiji tako nešto desilo. Uopšte u Srbiji, nažalost, nemamo običaj da sednemo i da pričamo, da se složimo oko neke ideje i da pokušamo da se izborimo za to. Znači, negde, kad je krenula kriza, seli smo, shvatili smo da imamo ogroman problem koji ne možemo sami da rešimo i pokušali smo zajedno tu nešto da uradimo. Napravili smo jedan krizni štab u kome smo i Miša i ja, i naši partneri. I taj krizni štab se sastaje svake nedelje, naravno Zoomom, i to je malo i kao psihološka radionica, gde se međusobno tešimo i nadamo da će biti bolje. Ono što smatram našim najvećim uspehom, to je sigurno uredba Vlade Republike Srbije o refundaciji karata. Mi smo jedni od pokretača te ideje, naravno uz pomoć svih ostalih. I to je, recimo, po meni najznačajnija stvar koju smo uspeli da uradimo. Imamo još gomilu zahteva, ali ti zahtevi su još uvek na čekanju. Šta će biti i kako će biti? Pa mislim da tu postoji par stvari po meni. Prva je da se industrija stvarno ujedini, da izađemo ozbiljno pred vladu, da napravimo jednu ozbiljnu radnu grupu i da kažemo, ljudi, bez vaše pomoći mi ne postojimo. I to mora ozbiljno da se shvati. Čeka nas neizvesna jesen, zima, odnosno vrlo izvesna. Biće zaustavljeno najverovatnije sve, opet nećemo moći da radimo ništa i opet ćemo pokušati da gasimo požar. Odnosno, mislim da stalno dolazimo iz neke pasivne pozicije. Mislim da je ovo trenutak kad moramo da budemo proaktivni i kad moramo da donesemo neke zaključke da se borimo za njih. Jer ako čekamo da nam vlada ili neko drugi reši naše probleme, ništa se neće desiti. Jer se ništa nije ni desilo. Desilo se da smo tretirani kao i svi drugi i desilo se da smo samo jednu od mnogo tačaka uspeli da izguramo.
Hvala ti, Vule, za ovaj prvi krug. Vratit ćemo se sigurno na ove predloge u drugom krugu ovog našeg panela. Sad bi se Nikoli obratio, dakle, kao nekome ko predstavlja OFPS na određeni način ipak strukovno udruženje. Kakav je vaš bio, da kažemo, kakva je vaša reakcija bila na krizu?
Najpre zahvaljujem na pozivu za učestvovanje u ovom online kontaktu. Ja sam direktor organizacije proizvođača fonograma Srbije. Dakle, kakva je bila reakcija u startu kada je uvedeno, svi znamo u stvari da je vrlo brzo taj COVID-19 i kod nas došao i na prečaci maltene uvedeno vanredno stanje, mislim 15. marta ove godine i u startu je bilo veoma panično kako ćemo se organizovati, šta ćemo raditi. Krenuli smo dobru godinu, terenski zastupnici samo što nisu trebali da krenu na teren, ali smo vrlo brzo shvatili da sve može, uključujući rad od kuće uglavnom. Dakle, smo u tom periodu radili od kuće, sve neophodne mere preduzeli, sve sastanke koji nisu bili neophodni, nismo ni održavali. Zaposleni su bili adekvatno, dakle, zaštićeni što se tiče svega toga. Mislim, to naravno, organizacija svakog posla je takva i tu smo se dobro snašli, ali bitnija stvar da je organizacija OFPS, gospodin Čuturilo je jednim delom i rekao šta su organizacije, koje su stvari mere organizacije donosile i neke mere su doneli zajedno, pre svega ovu meru za korisnike iz reda javnog saopštavanja koji naravno u vreme vanrednog stanja nisu plaćali, oni naravno koji nisu radili nisu plaćali, izuzev korisnika iz reda trgovina i tako dalje, dakle koji su radili, koji su normalno obavljali svoj posao i oni su dobijali redovno račune. I posle ukidanja vanrednog stanja opet se izlazilo u susret korisnicima, dakle davani su određeni popusti svim korisnicima iz reda javnog saopštavanja kao i emiterima koji plaćaju minimalnu naknadu. Dakle, vrlo su slične mere donosili i Sokoj s jedne strane i s druge strane organizacija OFPS i PI, pošto organizacija OFPS naplaćuje naknadu pored za proizvođače fonograma i za interpretatore. Dakle, zajedno smo sve to radili. Takođe, u junu mesecu doneta je odluka, odnosno krajem maja doneta je odluka, u junu sprovedena ta odluka našeg upravnog odbora, gde je formiran određeni fond za očuvanje i razvoj muzičke industrije, gde je određen iznos raspodeljen proizvođačima fonograma, odnosno nosiocima prava, ali opet uz uslov da u određenom periodu od 2 godine ti proizvođači fonograma, ta sredstva koja su dobili, ulože dalje, dakle upravo je zato i bio fond za očuvanje i razvoj muzičke industrije, da ulože dalje, dakle, u proizvodnju novih fonograma, odnosno u izdavanje novih pesama. Dakle, ne samo ove godine, nije rok ova godina, nego postoji rok do sredine 2022. godine, kada bi to sve trebalo da se opravda. Takođe bih rekao da svih 6 kolektivnih organizacija, odnosno organizacija za kolektivno ostvarivanje autorskih i srodnih prava na teritoriji Republike Srbije su krajem marta ove godine uputili Vladi Republike Srbije jedan dopis sa molbom za određenu pomoć. Mi smo stavili tu nekoliko načina na koje bi moglo da se pomogne. Dakle, jedan od predloga naših je i da svaka eventualna umanjenja u raspodelama, odnosno u raspodeli za ovu godinu budu iz budžeta nadomešćena nosiocima prava. Sad vidjet ćemo da li će to biti prihvaćeno ili ne, ali eto, to je jednostavno bilo jedan od načina da mi zaštitimo naše nosioce prava. Dakle, nosioci prava, pre svega autori, interpretatori, a i proizvođači fonograma jesu ugroženi zbog svega ovoga. Vidjet ćemo kako će reakcije biti. To je to ukratko za početak.
Hvala ti, Nikola, za prvi krug. Ja naravno neću sprečavati ako imate i unakrsna pitanja, da ne ispadne samo da ja ispitujem, ali evo za prvi krug. Mišo, ti predstavljaš i klub, dakle takođe, pored brojnih drugih poslova koje radiš i festivala i promoterskog posla, takođe si jedan od osnivača udruženja o kome je Vule pričao, a ovde si kao predstavnik udruženja ugostitelja. Dakle, ajmo sada u stvari da vidimo tvoj ugao i, mislim, bespredmetno je pričati o tome kako je konkretno tvoj posao ugrožen.
Dobar dan svima. Pa, moj neki osjećaj da je država na neki način pustila celu industriju niz vodu. Mislim da ima, da su strašno i da je to relativno mali broj ljudi, samo 100.000 recimo. I rekao bih da su odlučili da ni na koji način ne pomognu pre svega ugostiteljstvo, a onda i promotere i uopšte sve ljudi koji su u ovoj industriji zabave. Ono što mogu da kažem je da smo klubovi prestali sa radom 12. marta, da smo počeli da radimo posle toga 4. juna, da su nam rente, na primjer, u tom periodu od strane grada i od strane države smanjene samo mesec i po dana po 50%, iako praktično 3 meseca nismo radili. Dakle, rente smo praktično plaćali skoro sve vreme u punom iznosu. Sve vreme nam je stizala struja i naravno ostali su doprinosi koji ćemo ne znam kako platiti u 2021. ili 2022. Radili smo neki 20 dana u junu i iskorišteni smo kao mamac da postanemo leglo zaraze. Ta kampanja je trajala 2 nedelje i praktično taj 3. vikend koji smo radili u junu nam je uništen. Opet smo zatvoreni, juli i avgust. Opet smo dobili neke umanjene rente za 50%. Da bi opet otvorili u septembru, gde evo radimo već čitave 3 nedelje. Nadamo se da ćemo odraditi i 4. nedelju, ako se ne javlja kiša. I postoji problem koji, kao da su svi zaboravili da sada dolazi oktobar, da se otvaraju prostori koji su zatvoreni, koji nisu ništa bašte, da nije normalno biti u bašti na 14-15 stepeni na Kalemegdanu ili već gde vam je lokal i da nemamo nikakvu ideju šta će biti u petak. U petak je najavljena kiša, u subotu je najavljena kiša, mi možemo da radimo u zatvorenim prostorima do 9 sati uveče i do 50. Znači, svi koji smo bukirali programe za ovaj vikend smo pod velikim znakom pitanja, ukoliko smo u nekoj bašti, jer u bašti nećemo moći da se radi, a nećemo moći da pređemo ni u zatvorenim prostor. Plan ne postoji. Ja sam juče imao sastanak udruženja noćnih barova i klubova i pokušali smo da napravimo neki zajednički stav i neko pismo opet gradu Beogradu i Republici, naravno Srbiji, odnosno vladi, da nam hitno treba informacije i da nam hitno treba odluka o produženju radnog vremena u zatvorenim prostorima i o nekim novim merama ili da se jednostavno pridržava mera koje važe i za bašte, jer očigledno da klubovi i nisu leglo zarade, pošto ja koliko vidim klubovi rade već mesec dana, mi još uvek nemamo povećanje zaraženosti. Prema tome ne vidim razlog da klubovi ne dobiju dozvolu da rade do 1 ujutru, recimo kao što rade trenutno Basta, ili do 2 ujutru. I ne vidim razlog da se klubovima ne dozvoli da uz normalno poštovanje svih mera, merenje temperature, dezinfekcija nogu, dezinfekcija ruku, stolovi na 2 metra i tako dalje, ne mogu da rade i unutra. Jer ukoliko ne možemo da radimo i unutra, doćemo u situaciju da će nekih 18.000 ljudi ostati instant bez posla, da će najveći broj klubova da se zatvori, jer više nema bežanja. Ako sad ne možemo da radimo kad je ovako nizak nivo zaraze, sad će da bude u novembru, decembru, kad ta zaraza bude mnogo veća, kad broj zaraženih bude mnogo veći, kao što nam najavljuju, jel? A onda januar i februar i tako ne radimo, to su meseci kad se jednostavno ne radi ništa specijalno, kad su ljudi po odmorima, po slavama i tako dalje. Tako da plašim se da napreti katastrofa, plašim se da grad Beograd više neće biti, kako nas porede, istočni Berlin, što bi rekli, znači više nas niko neće upoređivati sa Berlinom, jer tih klubova i kafića više neće biti. Trenutno se na snazi do 9 uveče, to znači da ni restorana neće biti, jer moramo se složiti da niko neće ići u 6 sati na večeru u restoran, ljudi dolaze na večeru u restoran u 8 sati, pola 9, mi u 9 moramo da izbacimo sve goste napolje. Tako da mislim, još jednom ponavljam, da nas je država pustila niz vodu, da ne postoji plan. Mi smo kao i sa udruženjem UFPS, tako je i udruženje Noći barova i kluba poslalo puno zahteva vladi. Nažalost, ništa od tih zahteva se praktično nije dogodilo. Imali smo kao najveću pomoć i veliko obećanje, i to je bilo onako najveća mera pomoći klubovima, da ćemo dobiti kredit. Prvo je to bio kredit na 3 godine sa godinu dana grace perioda, da bi onda mjesec dana kasnije odlučili da to bude 2 godine grace perioda i 5 godina kredit. Niko u udruženju Noći klubova i barova nije dobio ni dinara od tog kredita. Taj kredit je, što se nas tiče, ne postoji. Hotelijeri su, vidim, dobili neku paušalnu pomoć. Da li to njih zadovoljava ili ne, ne znam, ali su neku direktnu i konkretnu pomoć dobili. Noćni klubovi i barovi nisu dobili ni dinara od države. Ja kao vlasnik sam dobio minimalac koji svi moji zaposleni i to je to. Očekujem mnogo više od države i mislim da je ključno da se svi ovde na ovom panelu zajedno ujedinimo, da napravimo neku platformu sa kojoj ćemo da izađemo pred vladu. Biće nas više, bit ćemo jači i mislim da mora da postoji do okončanja ove COVID krize, mora da postoji radna grupa Vlade Republike Srbije, struke, znači nekog iz kriznog štaba i predstavnika upravo svih naših udruženja, jer jednostavno drugačije ne možemo funkcionišemo. Ne možemo funkcionišemo tako što nas doktori zatvore, vlada nam ne da pomoć, a mi trebamo da plaćamo doprinose, radnike i sve ostalo što država očekuje od nas.
Hvala, Mišo. Sve što si rekao stoji i, nažalost, dakle, svako od nas u svom segmentu se suočava sa tim istim problemom. Dakle, ono što bi ja sad naveo kao nekakve primere, evo, na primjer, juče izašla slovenačka inicijativa u 7 tačaka. Oni su je definisali 34 strukovna udruženja, direktno se obraćaju ministru sa jasnim zahtevom šta treba da se radi, u suprotnom ga pozivaju da odstupi ako nije u stanju da to reši. Tako da tu ću inicijativu sa vama podeliti svakako. S druge strane, ovde imamo i problem tranzicije neke, pošto vlada još nije formirana, pa ni ne znamo, mislim, da li ćemo, kome treba da se obratimo, u stvari, da li aktuelnoj ili budućoj vladi, ali apsolutno jedina adresa koju treba da se obratimo svi mi zajedno koji smo ugroženi jeste upravo vrhovna, na neki način, vlast, dakle, da li sa to pitanje vlade ili grada, kao što su recimo iskustva u Austriji, gde se obraćaju, dakle, podjednako i federalnim i lokalnim vlastima. Dakle, ta brojna iskustva postoje. Naravno, to su sad razvijene zemlje na nekom visokom nivou, u pitanju je Švedska, u pitanju je Nemačka, ali bez obzira na to, mi moramo da preuzmemo makar inicijativu na neki način i da uzmemo neke dobre prakse. Nikola, šta ti misliš, šta nam je činiti?
Pa nisam siguran, iskreno govoreći. Mislim da je Vule napravio jedan nenameran lapsus malo čas kada je govorio u kontekstu da su nas tretirali isto kao i ostale. Mislim da nas nisu tretirali isto kao i ostale. Mi sad ovde govorimo iz različitih uglova industrije. Ja kad govorim imam na umu autore i izvođače kojima i sam pripadam. Dakle, u Srbiji postoji ukupno 2500 ljudi sa statusom samostalnog umetnika i postoji još jedan broj ljudi koji, kako bih nazvao, radnicima u kulturi, koji, znači, ekskluzivno svoju umetničku delatnost obavljaju kao jedini, i to im jedini izvor prihoda. Mi smo aplicirali za minimalnu pomoć koja je zaposlenima prvo odlučeno, pa onda obećano, pa onda dato. U martu mesecu, to je bila naša inicijativa, u aprilu mesecu su svi zapravo zaposleni isplaćeni. Nas 2500, znači samostalnih umetnika, je isplaćeno u julu mesecu. Znači za iste mesece, mart, april i maj. Što ti zapravo negde generalno zatvara oči ili ne, govori zapravo o odnosu države prema kulturi generalno, koliko je njima do nas stalo zapravo i gde smo na toj nekakvoj listi prioriteta. Ovog trenutka, ja mislim, juče ili danas se isplaćuje ovaj sledeći minimalac koji je u iznosu, mislim, 60% za 2 meseca. To su simbolične cifre, to je posle poreza, pretpostavljam, 30.000 dinara, 30-35. Dakle, koliko sam obavešten, to se juče i danas realizuje. Mi opet, kao samostalni umetnici, nismo ni na dugom štapu. Znači, nismo ni predmet razmišljanja. Znači, imamo potpuno tretman koji nam šalje signal da niti smo bitni, niti smo važni, niti smo potrebni. Znači, sve se događa zapravo nekakvim neprekidnim lobiranjem, da se kolokvijalno izrazim, cimanjem za rukav. Znači, sistemski nismo obuhvaćeni na način na koji bi bilo logično da budemo obuhvaćeni.
Ako ja mogu da se nadovežem samo, jako interesantna ova priča, zato što imamo 2500 ljudi koji su na kraju dobili posle teške muke tih 3 minimalca u julu i sada neka 2 polu minimalca, jel? Ali imamo neverovatnu količinu muzičara koji takođe su članovi Udruženja muzičara, koji su takođe članovi sindikata muzičara, koji takođe sebi plaćaju doprinose koji nisu dobili ni dinara. Trebamo i njih spomenuti, jer to je jako veliki broj.
Izvini, nisi me pratio. Ja sam izgovorio ljudi u statusu samostalnog umetnika i ljudi koji sebe doživljaju, koji su se nekada u socijalizmu zvali radnici u kulturi. Dakle, podrazumijeva da su u udruženju i da sami sebi plaćaju doprinos. Ogromna greška je napravljena što oni prvi put nisu obuhvaćeni. To uopšte nije sporno. Sada kada smo aplicirali za ovu drugu pomoć za 2 meseca, umanjeno za 60%, obuhvatili smo i njih. Međutim, ne znam da li se ispratio, ja kažem da za tu drugu pomoć koja se danas i juče isplaćuje, mi nismo ni na dugom štapu u razmišljanju. Informacija koja je do mene stigla je da se to neće ni dogoditi. E sad, ako to analiziramo, meni je žao što ovde nema nikoga iz zapravo ove vlade ili Ministarstva kulture, jer to je pitanje za njih. Mislim da je najdirektnija adresa za pitanje koje je tema ovog panela zapravo za nekog iz vlade ili iz Ministarstva kulture, s prostim pitanjem šta si ti radio svo ovo vreme? Šta je tvoj posao? Ti si primao platu. Umetnici koji imaš u angažmanima, u institucijama kulture, u teatrima, u muzejima i tako dalje, oni su primali nekakav minimalac. A šta je tvoja uloga kao nekog ko je državni službenik zadužen za nas bila svo to vreme? To je pitanje za $1 milion. Umesto da imaš inicijativu sa te pozicije, ti čekaš na našu inicijativu koja je vapaj i onda to sve traje beskonačno dugo. Ja nemam dilemu da je svaka država spora, mnogo sporije nego što bi mi hteli, ali ovo je zaista, ja ne znam da li je to kombinacija između ostalog i neukosti ili je to generalno stav, nisam dovoljno pametan, ali fakti su tu. Znači, neko ko sad u nekoj firmi radi nekakav posao zanatski i nije u mogućnosti da to obavlja, on dobija minimalac, a moj kolega koji je završio Berkeley, koji 3 puta nedeljno svira u klubu za 4.000 dinara da bi prehranio porodicu, ovo je nešto što se doživljava na taj način. To je i dalje virtualno ovde, posle svog vremena. Znači, ovaj prodaje sapun, pa mi je jasno, a ovo je nešto svira, on nije moja obaveza. Jako neozbiljno.
Nažalost, morat ćemo da se borimo da dokažemo da je i dalje da je ovo ozbiljan posao. Miša je spomenuo turizam. turizam se izborio, on je prepoznat kao neka grana koja je bitna za državu i oni su se izborili za pomoć. Da li misliš da je to možda model? Da se ide na tu jednokratnu pomoć koja bi bila orijentisana ne samo na pojedince, već i na organizacije, u smislu hoteli su dobili, dakle, da li misliš da bi to bio pravi pravac na neki način, da se kao industrija jedinstveno obratimo, pa da probamo da izvršimo neki pritisak?
Ja sam uvek se čujem? Uvek za bilo koju vrstu dogovora i frontalnog nastupa koji je uvek i kako bih rekao, delotvorniji i može da dobaci do mete nego ako su to samo neke individualne inicijative. Mi smo se sastajali u par navrata i to bi trebalo da postane nekakav trend, jer potpuno se slažem sa Buletom. Ukoliko sami organizovano sebi ne pomognemo, bar na način da uradimo sve što je do nas, to niko drugi neće uraditi do nas, svakako.
Tako je, Vule.
Jedna ogromna stigmatizacija muzike, muzičara, ljudi koji se bave ovim biznisom. To je prosto neverovatno. Mi smo predstavljeni kao strašila koja treba da plaši narod. Ja to tako doživljavam. Sve je moguće, sve je dozvoljeno, sem da se ide na koncert. Nemoguće održati koncert, trenutno. Ja sam hteo na milion načina da uradim razne ideje. Međutim, nemoguće. I šta se dešava? Mi smo bukvalno prepušteni sami sebi. Ne postojimo, nevidljivi smo. Nevidljivi smo i celo društvo, mediji i svi ostali nas doživljavaju kao mesto zaraze, kao opasnost za život. Ako je jedina opasnost muzički koncert ili događaj, pa onda mi nemamo problem. Mi nismo u opasnosti. Ceo sistem je napravljen tako da samo ovaj segment mora da se čuva, ne sme ni slučajno ništa da se desi, to je pod stalnim okom i pažnjom svih. I medija, i političara, i raznoraznih inspekcija i tako dalje. Idete u autobusu, da li je ko ikada platio kaznu zato što stoji 1,5 m od čoveka? Da li u autobusu se plaćaju kazne zato što neko nosi masku ili ne? Da li se to dešava na AD Ciganliji? Da li se dešavalo na AD Ciganliji, u tržnim centrima? Nigde, to je sve okej. Ali na koncertu je to nemoguće da se ne desi. Šta se dešava? Dešava se da nas čeka burna jesen i zima i proleće. Izveštaj koji imamo iz inostranstva, niko ne planira turneju pre neke 21. godine, odnosno sad se već planira 22. Tako je. I to intenzivno. Ja imam na čekanju par velikih izvođača, oni čekaju novembar da vide da li uopšte idu na turneju ili ne. Najverovatnije ne. Mi smo ovde prepušteni sami sebe. U jednom trenutku smo bili otvoreni, bili smo najbezbednija zemlja na svetu, u drugom trenutku smo postali najgora zemlja na svetu. U jednom trenutku imamo novac i nemamo problem sa novcem, u drugom trenutku nemamo novac za muzičku industriju. Stani, da li imamo novac ili nemamo novac? Ako imamo novac, postoji valjda neki deo i za ovaj biznis. Jer ovaj biznis je na ivici potpune katastrofe. Mi to možemo da priznamo ili ne, ali to je činjenica. Okej, u ovom trenutku neki ljudi sede po kućama, prave nove pesme, prave novu muziku i sigurno ćemo to slušati za 2-3 godine i sad ćemo se u pozitivnom smislu nastiće neke nove pesme, ali ko će preživeti, to stvarno ne znam.
To sam upravo teo da se nadovežem i da te pitam, to imajući u vidu da radiš brojne, odnosno da si radio brojne koncerte i nastupe, sam si rekao 80 godišnji. Mislim, ti si u kontaktu s tim ljudima, oni šta rade? Mislim, snimaju...
Ja sam u kontaktu...
Kako žive, mislim?
U kontaktu sam sa svim promoterima iz XU, sa nekim iz Evrope, preko Europa, organizacije koje pripada Arsenal Fest. U kontaktu sam i sa muzičarima. Dosta njih je potražilo neke druge poslove, bave se nekim drugim stvarima. Naravno, 3 do 5% autora i umetnika nisu u problemu, žive sasvim normalno i sve okej, ali mislim da je taj broj sve manje. Live Nation je izjavio da može da izdrži 12 meseci ako se ova kriza nastavi. Kao najveća kuća koja je, mislim, godišnje
36.000 događaja.
Tako je, 36.000 događaja. Sad ne znam koliko milijardi dolara prometa. Znači, nemoguće preživjeti ovo. Mi trenutno svi preživljavamo na nekim kreditima, na nekim pozajmicama, ko zna na koje načine se dovijamo, ali mislim da nas čeka ta neka otrežnjuća, još teža situacija. Ja nisam potpuni pesimista. Muzički biznis je prilagodljiv. Uvek se nađe neki način da se preživi i da se ide dalje. Jedan segment se zatvori, ok, otvori se neki drugi. Ali segment koji se tiče koncerata, živih nastupa je potpuno zatvoren, a to je bio segment koji je sigurno u zadnjih dosta godina bio segment koji je pravio najviše novca, ne samo za ljude koji su sa druge strane, nego i one koji su na bini.
Da, upravo u prethodnom panelu, ovom jutrašnjem, pričao nam je Tomas sa Waves Vienna, dakle, jedan od, ajde da kažemo, boljih i većih showcase u Evropi. Oni su sa 15.000, oni su održali showcase prošli vikend, sa 15.000 su na 500 posetilaca pali, naravno, u odnosu na sve mere. Kao što mi ovde sedimo na 1,5 m razdaljine, a svi ostali unutra imaju prostor, a Miša je na Zoomu, tako su i oni pravili isto neki hibrid, da kažemo, live-a i online-a. S tim što, znači, bilo ipak dozvoljeno da ga održe, što je jako važno. Nikola, koje je tvoje mišljenje o ovome što pričamo, imajući u vidu da upravo ovo što je Vole sad na kraju rekao, taj živi nastup, znači živi kontakt je potpuno na neki način zabranjen. S druge strane, ajde kažemo, mediji funkcionišu, radio funkcioniše, televizija beleži rast. Mislim, sad pričamo o svetu. Ovi Netflixi i tako dalje. Dakle, gaming industrija je procvetala. Znači, dešava se jedan trend, ako sagledamo čitavu kreativnu industriju, gde određeni segmenti skaču. Mislim, zato što ljudi sede kod kuće.
Da, reemitovanje isto skače, tako je.
Dakle, koje je tvoje mišljenje u odnosu na ovo što smo čuli iz pozicije nekoga ko se ipak bavi jednim dosta usko stručnim poslom?
Dakle, ja mogu da pričam iz ugla organizacije OFPS koja naplaćuje naknadu i za emitovanje, dakle od radio i TV stanica, za reemitovanje od kablovskih operatora i za javno saopštavanje, dakle od kafića, restorana, organizatora, događaja i tako dalje i tako dalje. I mogu da kažem da ćemo mi dalje pratiti šta se tu dešava i donositi određene odluke. Naš upravni odbor to redovno i prati i donosi odluke i donosit će i buduće odluke radi zaštite i pomoći svim korisnicima koji su ugroženi. S druge strane, kao što si rekao, Marko, dakle, dosta naših korisnika beleži rast, dakle, u prihodima. Sada vidjet ćemo, ne znamo tačno koliki će taj rast biti, to ćemo znati do godine, ali to vidimo i sada po naplati od pojedinih kategorija korisnika koja nije uopšte ni pala nešto specijalno, u nekim kategorijama je i povećana, naravno u delu javnog saopštavanja je pala drastično, imajući u vidu i te mere koje su donete, imajući u vidu da korisnici nisu radili, odnosno ni kafići nisu radili u jednom periodu, a da ne govorim dalje o klubovima i tako dalje koji su tek imali velike probleme. Dakle, ja jedino mogu da kažem da ćemo mi pratiti i dalje donositi odluke u skladu sa situacijom. A opet, samo bih kratko, opet i sa ciljem da naši nosioci prava, dakle nosioci prava kojima mi isplaćujemo naknadu, zbog kojih mi postojimo i za koje radimo i kojima isplaćujemo raspodjelu, ne trpe, dakle, bar ovaj deo, odnosno ovaj segment njihovog prihoda od kolektivnog ostvarivanja.
Hvala ti, Nikola. Mišo, dosta si iscrpno u prvom delu dao analizu stanja. Šta misliš za dalje?
Prvo mi je potpuno šokantna odluka vlade da se da pomoć apotekama, maloprodajnim objektima i mnogim firmama koje su nikad bolje poslovale u ovom periodu. Mislim da je to bila velika greška i na sva ono obećanje koje smo imali da će se konačno napraviti neka pomoć direktno u ugostiteljstvu, turizmu, odnosno umetnosti, dobili smo po 18.000 svi jednako i mislim da je to bila stravična greška, da je mnogo para potrošeno na pogrešan način. Ono što je meni bilo šokantno jeste ta cela kampanja koja se vodila da su klubovi i koncerti leglo zaraze u situaciji gde u Engleskoj, na primjer, vlada je napravila akciju da podrži lokalne pubove i lokalne restorane i vlada u Engleskoj plaća 50% računa svima koji jedu u lokalnom pubu ili lokalnom restoranu ponedjeljak, utorak, srijeda. Dakle, vi dođete u restoran, potrošite lupa sada 50 funti, platit ćete 25 funti, a vlada finansira preostali 25 funti i plaća ostatak tog računa lokalnom pubu. Tako rade ozbiljne zemlje, mi očigledno to nismo. Imamo dvije vrste pomoći koje nam trebaju. Jedna vrsta pomoći je ono što se do sada događalo, a to je pomoć zaposlenima. To su minimalci. Mi ne radimo i kako sad stvari stoje, klubovi i koncerti se neće događati negdje do marta, aprila meseca. Ovo što se bude događalo, to su neke stvari to su neke akcije koje održavaju ljude u formi, ali mi tu ne možemo da napravimo profit da bi mogli da platimo plate i sve ostale troškove koje imamo. Ono što se nije dogodilo, a to je nije se dogodila direktna pomoć firmama. Dakle, nijedna firma, pogotovo u našem poslu kad ne radimo, kažem, 11 mjeseci, nije dobila direktnu pomoć. Da li je to smanjenje PDV-a koje mora da se dogodi posle ovoga? Pre svega imamo preveliki PDV i tako u gostiteljstvu, a možemo i na kartama da smanjimo PDV, moramo da smanjimo PDV na ugovore stranaca kada dolaze u Srbiju i tako dalje i tako dalje. To je već u nekim zemljama jako dobro rešeno i mi u UPS-u, ovo sad govorim kao deo UPS-a, već imamo plan i prijedlog kako bi to moglo da se izvede bazirano na onome što je rađeno u drugim zemljama. Austrija, Engleska, Nemačka, Mađarska, svi su smanjili PDV u ugostiteljstvu na 5 do 8%. Kod nas je dalje PDV 20%, jako je potpuna katastrofa. Dalje, kredit, niko nije dobio kredit, moramo da dobijemo hitno. Znači, to više nije priča danas, sutra, to mora hitno da se da svim ukoliko želimo da opstanemo. Ukoliko je u ovoj državi bitno da 100.000 ljudi ne ostane bez posla, svi privredni subjekti koji se bave promocijskim poslom, koji se bave ticketingom, koji se bave ugostiteljstvom, odnosno posebno klubovi i noćni barovi, jer mi smo najugroženiji, mi zaista nismo radili. Ja imam i restoran i moj restoran je uspeo da sakupi za plate u julu i avgustu i šta je tu je, mislim, borimo se i radimo šta možemo, ali klubovi moraju da dobiju pomoć. Doprinose niko od klubova neće moći da plati. To može da se reši samo na dva načina, ili direktnom pomoći vlade, koje će biti, pošto znam da ne mogu da nam ukinu doprinose zbog MMF-a i nekih pritisaka koje imaju s tih strane. Dakle, moraju da nam daju neku subvenciju koja je neporosna subvencija koja će biti u nivou doprinosa koliko je to vrednost po firmi i to je po meni jedini način da se reši taj problem. Drugi način da se zatvaraju firme, gde opet dolazimo do 100.000 ljudi koji ostaju bez posla, a mislim da to nikome u ovoj državi ne treba. Mi nećemo raditi do marta, aprila. Mi nemamo nikakav plan. Znači, država Srbije nema nikakav plan šta će da se događa u oktobru, novembru, decembru, januaru, februaru, martu. Ta priča o vakcini, neće se vakcina dogoditi u Srbiji pre februara, marta meseca, ako i tad. Mora da se oformi neka radna grupa, moramo da mi odlučujemo, makar delom da odlučujemo o sudbi naših poslova i naših života. U ovom trenutku o nama odlučuju doktori koji nemaju pojma o našoj situaciji, koji i kod života nisu imali privatnu firmu i ne znaju šta znači kad ti dođe 20 ljudi i traži ti pare, nemaju hleba da jedu. Ne znaju šta znači računi i tako dalje i tako dalje. Uopšte generalno nama odlučuju ljudi koji nemaju ideju šta se događa na terenu. Mi moramo da budemo deo rešenja. Deo rešenja moramo da budemo svi mi koji se nalazimo u ovom poslu. I ta radna grupa sa vladom je po meni jedina nada za ugostiteljstvo, jedina nada za ticketing, jedina nada za promotere i uopšte za kulturu.
Pa evo, uvodiš nas upravo u stvari u treći i poslednji krug. Znači, koje su ideje? Ajde da krenemo opet od Čuture. Dakle, koje su ideje, šta nam je činiti, šta da radimo, na koji način da se organizujemo, da li je pravi put ovo što smo krenuli, odnosno što su sad svako na svoj način pokrenuo, da li postoji neki drugi način, šta misliš?
Pa ja bih krenuo možda od pretpostavke za koju mislim da je opravdana, da mi zapravo imamo segmente muzičke industrije kao takva, da zapravo muzičku industriju nemamo. i da imamo zapravo ljude dobre volje i ljude s energijom koji bi da to nekako objedine i da stave na nekakvu mapu, da trenutno zapravo muzičke industrije kao takve nema, jer da je ima, ona bi imala svoje regulative, imala bi svoja pravila i sistemski bi bila uvezana s državom, naterala bi državu da je prepozna kao takvu i da bude u domenu svoje odgovornosti zapravo kooperativna i odgovorna. Evo recimo, opet kažem, pitanje koje bi trebalo da bude upućeno nekome ko nije ovde prisutan, jer tema ovog panela je šta bi vlada mogla da uradi iz rukava, opet kažem, autora, izvođača. Izneću jednu činjenicu, a to je da mi nemamo regulisano emitovanje u smislu prava i obaveza emitera, a sve u kontekstu zaštite domaćeg autorstva. Kao što imaju zemlje okruženje, poput Hrvatske i Slovenije, imaju je sve zapadne zemlje. Znači, vrlo precizno se zna kojim procentom mora da bude obuhvaćena domaća muzika, jer ljudi prosto baštine svoju kulturu i u tom kontekstu moraju da zaštite svoje autore. Imate CISAC radio stanica koja tretira inostranu muziku i muziku iz regiona koju potpuno neopravdano zove muzikom iz regiona, jer to nije muzika iz regiona, to je inostrana muzika. U definiciji postoji samo domaća i strana muzika. Znači, regulacija tog pitanja je nešto što u finalnom ishodu mora da ima preporuku, striktnu preporuku vlade jedne države, koji će dobije svaki emiter, gde će mu se jasno staviti do znanja da nepoštovanje te preporuke će značiti drugačije oporezivanje. I na taj način štitite domaćeg autora. Nekim ljudima je i dalje špansko selo funkcija Sokoja, recimo kao esnafske organizacije. Neki ljudi misle da smo deo državnog aparata, nemamo nikakve veze. A pritom, osim što ostvarujemo prava svojih članova autora, ponašamo se odgovorno da recimo 50% produkcije klasične muzike ne bi postojalo bez pomoći Sokoja iz Fonda za kulturna davanja. Isto važi i za džez muziku, isto važi za sijaset festivala, kako seriozne, tako i džez i popularne muzike. Dakle, ovog trenutka, recimo nešto najmanje što bi mogli da urade, mogli bi da opet urade kratku preporuku i da kaže, bar u ovom periodu, malo se više bazirajte na domaćem autorstvu, jer to će pomoći taj segment industrije, pomoći će i autore privatno. To je nešto najmanje što možete da uradite. Međutim, ja sam ubeđen da ovim i dalje nismo ne na dugačkom štapu, nego nismo u primisli nikome. Nažalost.
Da li je rješenje da se napravi jedna bukvalno jednostavna inicijativa, u smislu da to sad ne bude, kako bih rekao, znači da nema 100 zahteva, ali da ima 3 konkretna zahteva, nešto otprilike ovo što je Miša spominjao, dakle prvo da bude adresirano na pravo mesto, odnosno na vladu, drugo da bude vrlo jednostavno, znači ti ljudi ne rade, ne postoje, dakle da li ne treba mnogo ni širiti priču ili se onda komplikuje, već je treba pojednostaviti i da bude bukvalno ono, kao što ima crveni apel.
Ne mogu više se složim s tobom. Recimo, prvi predlog bi bio o kom sam govorio u prvom krugu. Znači, nemojte nas diskriminisati, tretirajte samostalne umetnike i radnike u kulturi koji sami sebi plaćaju doprinose na identičan način kao što tretirate ljude zaposlene u bilo kojoj drugoj industriji. Dakle, u ovoj situaciji dajte ljudima drugu pomoć. Oni zaslužuju ništa manje i ništa više od bilo kog drugog. To bi bila jedna preporuka. Druga preporuka, ovo koju smo malo čas elaborirali, insistirajte da se ovog trenutka, kako bih rekao, se tretira domaće autorstvo sa malo više privilegije, jer to je novac koji će se nama vratiti. Sokoj na kraju svake finansijske godine ozbiljan deo kolača podeli koji kuda po inostranstvu.
Dobro, to je već po meni poprilično jasno. Šta ti misliš, Vule?
Naravno da se slažem. Ja mislim da prvo treba stvarno da krenemo od nas, da se ujedinimo i da napravimo to što smo u Sokoju napravili 2 sastanka, već po meni je značajna stvar. To se nije dešavalo u prošlosti. Dalje, ja sam bio prisutan i na 2 sastanka kod premijerke. Ni to se nije dešavalo u prošlosti. Znači, postoji ipak neka nada da se ova industrija vidi. Mi kao UPTAS smo predlagali još jednu stvar, da se smanji visina zakupa prostora koji su u vlasništvu grada i države. Ako sad centar ima 3600 mesta, ako može da se koristi sad 1200 ili 1000, ne 1200, pa ne može cena da bude ista kao što je bila pre. To je tako jednostavno. Ako dom omladine ima 600 mesta, toliki je kapacitet kad potpišete ugovor sa domom omladine, pa ne može zakup da bude isti. Ima puno stvari gde se ne traži od države novac, nego se samo traži dobra volja i brzina.
Da li je to što je Miša spominjao da bi u stvari trebala postoji permanentna neka komunikacija kao radna grupa koja bi mogla da, kao krizni, ajde kažem, krizni štab za ovaj segment?
Apsolutno. Prvo, mi treba da oformimo taj krizni štab u kojem će biti ljudi iz svih segmenata, ne samo iz jednog, i onda da izađemo pred vladu sa našim zahtevima. Može se doći do vlade i čuće se ako budemo dovoljno glasni i dovoljno uporni. Opet ponavljam, mi smo stalno u pasivnoj poziciji. Mi se stalno branimo. Požar gori svuda oko nas, mi još nismo počeli da ga gasimo. Znamo da će biti požar. Mogli smo to da uradimo pre 3 meseca. Ne, mi stalno čekamo. Ja sam za to. Ja sam da cela industrija stane na jednu stranu, da sedne, da se dogovori. Pokušali smo i radimo na tome i da izađemo pred vladu, ali stalno da tražimo i da budemo glasni.
Jasno. Znači, trenutak je za akciju. To je u stvari.
Apsolutno.
Nikola?
Ja bih se nadovezao i na ovo prethodno što su rekli sagovornici. Postoji u našem zakonu o autorskim i srodnim pravima jedno pravo autora i nosilaca autorskih i srodnih prava koje se zove pravo na posebnu naknadu, o kojem je malo čas pričao i gospodin Mitko iz CISAC-a i rekao je da je u našoj zemlji to pravo zapostavljeno totalno. Ono postoji formalno u zakonu, postoje tarife i Sokoja, i PI, i organizacije OFPS za posebnu naknadu, ali plaćanje posebne naknade od strane, samo da kažem šta je posebna naknada, to je naknada koju su dužni da plaćaju proizvođači i uvoznici praznih nosača zvuka i uređaja za njihovu reprodukciju. Zato što se kod nas u našem zakonu je dozvoljeno nama kao korisnicima autorskih dela i predmeta srodnih prava da kopiramo za lične nekomercijalne potrebe, dakle autorsko delo, odnosno predmet srodnog prava. U zemljama kao što je Srbija, gde je to predviđeno, proizvođači i uvoznici tih praznih nosača zvuka i uređaja za njihovu reprodukciju plaćaju takozvanu pravičnu, odnosno posebnu naknadu. Zakonom našim je predviđeno da se ta posebna naknada plaća za određene uređaje koji se određuju uredbom Vlade Republike Srbije. Uredba Vlade Republike Srbije je doneta 2010. godine nakon stupanja postojećeg zakona o autorskom i srodnim pravima i ona od tada nije izmenjena. Organizacije, sve kolektivne organizacije na teritoriji Srbije su u nekoliko navrata posljednji put pre ove krize apelovale da se proširi ta lista tehničkih uređaja za koje se plaća ta posebna naknada. Dakle, na toj listi se sada nalaze neki uređaji koji su totalno više neupotrebljivi, odnosno koji se ne upotrebljavaju više, a ne postoje, na primjer, mobilni telefoni koji su najveći, najveći izvor i najviše se oni koriste i za slušanje i za kopiranje. I, dakle, evo taj jedan segment, dakle, gospodin Mitko je upravo rekao da je kod nas to katastrofalno. Postoji u zakonu, postoji tarifa, treba da se promeni. Dakle, opet ćemo se sigurno obratiti kad se formira nova vlada da se izmeni ta uredba. Dakle, tu se ne radi o pomoći autorima i nosiocima autorskih i srodnih prava, nego jednostavno o njihovom pravu koje se ne tretira onako kako bi trebalo da se tretira. I naknada koja se trenutno u Srbiji plaća za sve nosioce prava je mizerna, dakle, sramota i da kažem koliko se malo koliko malo autori i nosioci prava dobijaju toga.
Znači, ako sam te dobro razumeo, postoji mogućnost da još može u stvari se doći do sredstava,
tako je,
ali se ne koristi tamo.
Pa da,
nije regulisano zakonom.
Potrebno je, zakonom je regulisano, potrebno je da vlada proširi listu tih tehničkih uređaja za koje se plaća ta posebna naknada i kad se proširi ta lista, donese se nova tarifa uz asistenciju po zakonu o autorskim i srodnim pravima, uz asistenciju Zavoda za intelektualnu svojinu koji je nadležan za davanje saglasnosti na predlog tarife i taj postupak bi mogao da se okonča u nekoliko meseci narednih. Dakle, to se, ponavljam, ne radi o pomoći autorima, nego o njihovom pravu.
Još jedna tačka za radnu grupu.
Pa da.
Tako, Mišo, izvoli.
Pre svega oduševljen sam predlogom Čuture, apropo radio stanice i televizije, da se traži da se napravi neka odredba da će će upravo naši autori emitovati mnogo više nego strani. Mislim da je Francuska to uvela pre nekih 20 godina, da njihove radio stanice, ako se ne vera, moraju da emituju 60% domaćih programa. Ukoliko to ne rade, onda imaju neki veći poezd i tako nešto, to će Čutura vratno znati bolje od mene. Tako da apsolutna podrška za to i nadam se da će to, ako ne sada, onda uskoro da se implementira. Ono što mislim da nama potrebno ministar kulture. Mislim da nam je potreban konačno da ministar kulture jako dugo nemamo ministra kulture. Ja se ne sjećam posljednji ministra kulture. Imao sam neku nadu i ulagao sam neku nadu u Tasovca, to je bilo veliko razočaranje. Ovo posle ga ne bi ni komentarisao. Mi ministarstvo kulture nemamo. Mi jednostavno treba nam neki šerif koji će da dođe na to mesto da se zaista bori za kulturu u ovoj državi. Ovako ne vidim. Ja sam bio slobodan da napišem neki papir kako ja to vidim, kako vidim mi Udruženja klubova, u tom papiru sam pričao i sa Vuletom pre ovog razgovora i ukratko ću pročitati o čemu se radi. Dakle, ja mislim da imamo dva perioda. Imamo period opstanka i spašavanja industrije, pa onda imamo period oporavka industrije. Period opstanka i spašavanja industrije je vrlo jednostavan. Prvo, moramo da dobijemo prioritetno obrađivanje zahtjeva za kredite fonda za razvoj. Da li je to fond za razvoj, da li je to neka posebna vladina agencija, ne znam, ali to jednostavno mora da se ubrza. Sufinansiranje ličnog dohodaka svih zaposlenih u iznosu minimalnog ličnog dohodka je nešto što je neophodno i morali bi da imamo automatiku u smislu u svakom periodu kad je nemoguće organizovati koncerte i nemoguće raditi za klubove ili već kako to bude predstavljeno, se automatski pali neka vrsta te pomoći i sufinansiranja ličnog dohodka. Treća stavka bi bila smanjenje cene zakupa prostora koji su u državnom ili gradskom vlasništvu i olakšavanje procedura za dozvole za događaje na otvorenom. I to je nešto što će nam značiti da opstanemo, jer ovde je pitanje pre svega opstanaka, onda tek nešto drugo. Onda imamo period oporavka. Znači dobit ćemo vladu, ta vlada će prvo raditi primopredaju i tako dalje, onda će neko trenutku morati da se, kad prođe ovaj COVID, da proći će da će biti februar, mart sledeće godine, će biti septembar, oktobar sledeće godine, neko trenutku će COVID da ode, a mi ćemo biti uništeni. Znači svi ćemo biti u takvim minusima i takvim dugovima prema vladi da neće biti moguće oporavak. Ja mislim, mi mislimo da mora da se napravi petogodišnji plan i nacionalna strategija za rešavanje izlaska iz krize. Stopa PDV-a na uvoznice i kulturne događaje koje bi privrednim subjektima najpogođenijim ovom krizom bio omogućen postepeni povratak na nivo poslovanja. Utvrđivanje jasnih pravila pod kojima je moguće organizovati manifestacije, dakle pravo na rad. Ukidanje obaveza plaćanja poreza i drugih dažbina za nastupe stranih umetnika kako bi se stimulisao njihov dolazak i ojačao kulturni turizam. Implementacija svih EU direktiva o autorskim i srodnim pravima. Definisanje statusa slobodnih umetnika i isplata 3 minimalne zaštite svim umetnicima, to već spada u onaj prvi deo, jel? Poreska i drugo oslobođenje za sve firme i kompanije koje žele da kroz sponzorstva podrže kulturne objekte i događaje. Ovo je jako interesantno. Mi smo to imali u 90. godinama i nažalost to je bilo sprovedeno tako da su firme koristile tu situaciju i na taj način nekako prave novac. Pa sad radiš spot, neko ti uplati enormnu sumu para, ti spot napraviš za 5.000 evra i onda se taj novac praktično opere. Dakle, to je nešto što mora da se kontroliše, mora da se nađe pravi način, ali mislim da je to jedan od načina kako može da se pomogne kulturi. I što se tiče organizacije koncerta, i što se tiče izdavanja, i što se tiče uopšte bavljenja umetnosti. Produžavanje predviđenih olakšica prilikom zapošljavanja nezaposlenih lica na osnovu poreza i doprinosa od 1. januara 2020. do 2023. godine. Jednostavno, bez neke ozbiljne, ali zaista ozbiljnog plana i ozbiljnog rada Ministarstva kulture mi nećemo opstati. Grad Beograd više neće biti Berlin i ja ne znam ko će se baviti umetnosti u ovoj državi. Umetnici su dobili ništa. Umetnici su pregaženi, kao i mi ugostitelji, kao i promoteri. Moramo da imamo radnu grupu i moramo da učimo svoj sudbini 5. put što ponavljam u ovom sastanku, ali zaista mislim da je to ključ.
Hvala ti, Mišo, ovo je bilo vrlo konkretno. Ja bih ostavio, ako neko od vas još ima nešto da doda na temu svega ovoga što smo govorili.
Pa evo, mogu ja da kažem nešto. Dobili smo limun, ajde bar da napravimo limunadu. Ajde napravimo nešto od ovoga.
Slažem se, Vole, i mislim da se svi slažemo ovde prisutni, a nadam se da ćemo naći nekoga ko će biti u stanju i da nas sasluša. Hvala vam ljudi na vašem vremenu. Ovim je Kontakt online završen. Zaključke ovog panela, koji je verovatno najbitniji za budućnost onoga čime se svi mi zajedno bavimo, ćemo napraviti i onda ćemo predati u stvari ovom našem, da kažemo, formalnom ili neformalnom krugu koji će onda dalje već vidjeti šta će sa tim. Jasna stvar je da mora se deluje i da se ide u akciju. Hvala vam još jedan put. Vidimo se dogodine.
Hvala.
Hvala.